Rank a system that defines a person's standing, and the very thing that ignites desire, power, intelligence, connections, wealth, occupation. In this era, everything is assigned a rank. And it's within this world that the journey of a young boy begins. Tully Village, nestled in a small valley, was surrounded on all sides by lush, green mountains and forests. A boy gripped an axe tightly and brought it down hard onto a block of firewood. His name was Ro, 16 years old, a resident of Tully. After a hard day's work, he glanced at the stack of chopped wood and wiped the sweat from his brow. All right, finally done. Just then, Ben ran over and called out, "Hey Ro, can you help me plow the fields later?" Ro agreed without hesitation. "Yeah, sure." But before he could finish speaking, a loud shout rang out, "Hey!" followed by a thunderous kick to Ben's back that sent him sprawling to the ground, crying out in pain. Yuna stood with her hands on her hips, pointing at Ben's face as she scolded, "Stop asking Ro to do everything for you." Ben picked himself up, mumbling, "But Ro always looks kinda spaced out, and he's got free time anyway." Yuna snapped, "That's just how Ro is. He's always been a bit of an airhead." She lunged forward, grabbed Ro by the collar, and gave him a good shake. "Because you keep helping everyone, they treat you like a tool. That's not okay at all." But Ro just blinked and replied, "I don't really mind though." Yuna softened a little. "Yeah, I know you're always thoughtful, Ro. But still," her face lit up suddenly as she changed the subject. "Oh right. Have you ever thought about leaving the village?" Lowering her voice to a whisper, she said, "I know a secret path. No one else knows about it." Unfortunately, an old woman overheard her and immediately shouted, "Absolutely not." She slammed her cane on the ground. "Have you forgotten the village rules? No one is allowed outside." Without answering Yuna's question, the old lady barked, "Doesn't matter. Just know. Someone locked this girl up for a while." Two young men grabbed her and dragged her away. "Come on. This is so unfair," Yuna yelled, struggling against them. "Why is it always like this?" Nearby, Uncle Tom lifted a water bucket and said, "Hey Ro, can you help me fetch some water later?" "Sure," Ro replied. In the background, Yuna kept shouting, "We're the only two the same age in this whole village. I don't want to be locked up again." Watching the commotion, Uncle Tom chuckled dryly. "You two are complete opposites, huh? Ro, you should take a break sometimes. I'm sure there's something you want to do too, right?" Ro answered sincerely, "It's fine. I'll help." He continued, "After my parents passed away and I was left all alone, everyone here welcomed me like family. I know that. I know they're all trying so hard to make sure I don't feel lonely. That's why I want to return the favor. I really care about this village, and everyone in it." Uncle Tom was moved to tears. "Ro, you're something else. Hey, how about you move in with me starting today?" Ro quickly declined. "No, thank you. I still have the house my parents left me. And to me, the most important thing is everyone here. The outside world doesn't matter much to me." Meanwhile, Yuna had been locked inside a bamboo cage. She rattled the bars furiously, shouting, "Let me out." The old woman sighed in frustration. "If only you were half as sensible as Ro." Yuna then asked, "But Granny, why aren't we allowed to leave the village? We bring in merchants from time to time." "Isn't that enough?" she replied. "That's not the same," Yuna protested. "The outside world is so much bigger. Why do we have to stay trapped in here forever?" The old woman fell silent for a moment before speaking gently. "Because we're the ones someone out there holds a grudge against." "A grudge? From who?" Yuna asked, eyes wide. "That's not something you need to know just yet. Time will reveal everything." Back at the well, Ro was busily drawing water, filling a large bucket. He wiped his brow again. "All right, all done." Suddenly something hit him on the head. "Huh?" he muttered, turning around. It was Yuna. She pressed her finger to her lips. Then she gestured for him to come with her. Ro followed her down a narrow path. "Are you sneaking out again?" he asked. Yuna shrugged. "I've been caught so many times, sneaking out is like second nature now." "That's not something to be proud of," Ro mumbled. "Forget that," she said, beaming. "Come on, Ro. If we leave the village again, Granny's going to be mad," Ro warned. "It'll just be a little while. Don't worry. I want to show you something special." In the end, Ro couldn't resist. The lure of the world beyond was too tempting. The two slipped through a gap in the village wall and ran off. Yuna skipped and sang happily while Ro carefully scanned the forest around them. At the end of the path, bright sunlight poured in. Yuna grinned. Here it is. Ro's eyes suddenly widened in shock. The sight before him was overwhelming. A vast, breathtaking expanse stretched out in every direction, majestic mountains, a stream trickling into a great lake. Yuna shouted excitedly, "Look, Ro. This is the outside world. It's really this huge." Ro let out a stunned, "Hua," his face lit up with awe. "This is amazing." Yuna glanced over at him, then pulled out a book and flipped through it. "Hey Ro, do you know the rules of the outside world?" Ro blinked. "Rules? How would I know anything like that?" Yuna opened to a specific page. According to this book one got from a merchant, the outside world runs on a ranking system. Adventurers, couriers, doctors, musicians, there are all kinds of rankings, and people listed on them are called rankers. She leaned in, eyes gleaming. Even weapons, food, power, and wealth get ranked. Everything does. And everyone out there is seriously competing with one another. Ro carefully read through the pages. So this outside world had its own system, its own laws. Yuna nodded eagerly. It's not like the laws of our village. It sounds way more exciting. I want to become a ranked adventurer. I want to travel the world and compete with challengers from everywhere. One day, I'll be a legendary adventurer respected by everyone. Ro looked into her blazing eyes and murmured, "But the village rules say we're not allowed to leave." Yuna shouted, "I don't care. I've already made up my mind. I'm going." Suddenly she held her hand out toward him and said, "So come with me, Ro. Let's go on an adventure together. You should see the outside world too." Ro was caught off guard. "Huh?" Yuna asked quietly. "Do you remember? When we were 5, that time I was attacked by a giant bird? You saved me." Ro blinked. "Really? I did that." She nodded confidently. "Yeah, I think there was even a green light glowing around you." Ro thought to himself, a green light. Yuna's tone turned serious. "Ever since then I've known. You might act a little spacey sometimes, but when it really counts, you're stronger than anyone I know." She stretched her hand out again, smiling brightly. "You'd shine even brighter out there. So let's go explore the world together." The thought of exploring the unknown stirred something inside Ro, but after a long pause, he lowered his gaze. "Thank you, Yuna, but I can't. I love our village too much. I can't leave it behind." Yuna exploded. "Ah, you're so stubborn." With a pout she spun around. "Fine, I'm going without you. You can just live in this village forever, you stubborn idiot." Ro called after her. "Be safe on your way back." As he watched her walk away, something inside him shifted. Yuna, leaving the village. He had never imagined such a thing. He turned his gaze toward the horizon. The concept of ranking echoed in his mind. Evening had come and the sky was awash with the golden glow of sunset. "Guess I should head back too," Ro muttered. He pushed himself up with his hands on his knees. "My legs are so numb," but suddenly, something strange caught his eye, something massive, like a giant stone, emerging slowly from behind a thick cloud. "Huh? What is that?" he murmured. Without warning, lightning surged from the object. Thunder cracked through the sky. Boom, boom. Ro screamed and covered his ears. Ah. Moments later the dust cleared. Everything was eerily silent again. Ro stared up at the sky. What just happened? That thing, it's gone. But an icy dread crept over him. Wait, the lightning struck. Right near the village. Panic seized him. He bolted for home, trying to convince himself everything was fine. It's okay, I'm sure nothing happened. Yuna, Grandma, everyone. Then he stopped dead in his tracks. His eyes went blank. The entire village was gone. Not a single trace remained. Just a massive crater. Ro staggered forward in shock. What is this? What the hell is this? He stumbled into the crater, murmuring, "The village, this can't be real." His voice rose into a desperate cry. Yuna, Grandma, is anyone there? Tears welled up. He remembered Yuna's words, "It's okay, Ro. I'll always be by your side." The kind villagers' voices echoed in his mind. From today on, we're family. You're not alone anymore. And now they were gone. Ro collapsed to his knees, overcome with grief. He screamed into the void, "Why? Why did this happen?" Ro's eyes widened in shock as a voice suddenly echoed through the silence. "Damn it, I'm too late." Again. A man named Adal stood at the edge of the massive crater, scanning the devastation. His gaze landed on a lone boy sitting at the bottom, still and trembling. Without hesitation, he leapt down and landed beside him. You're the only survivor from Tully Village? Adal asked, his tone a mix of disbelief and pity. Ro gave a faint nod. Yeah, Adal's expression softened. You must be hurting badly. Trying to offer some comfort, he added, don't worry. That island, whatever it was, it's gone now. Ro's eyes lit up in confusion. Island. He clutched Adol's sleeve, voice cracking. You know what that thing was, don't you? Please tell me what happened. What happened to my village? To everyone? Tears streamed down the boy's face as he begged for answers. Adol's face tightened in pain. He reached into his coat and handed Ro a small folded note. Forget the village, he said quietly. Go to the place written here. You'll be safe there. Ro's voice rose in desperation. Answer me. Adal suddenly snapped back, voice louder this time. Open your eyes, kid. The village is gone. There's nothing left. He gently pushed Ro away and stood up. This world, it's no place for someone like you. Forget what happened. It's the only way. Please, don't dig any deeper. You'll only get yourself killed. Ro dropped his head, whispering no then, as if summoned by those words. A familiar voice echoed in his mind, Yuna's voice. I've always known. Even if you seem a little spaced out most of the time, when it really matters, you're stronger than anyone. And in that moment, a soft green light began to radiate from Ro's body, growing brighter, more intense, until it pulsed with power. Adal froze, spinning around. His eyes went wide in shock. What the hell? Ro clenched his fists, eyes blazing. How could I forget? He growled. I will find that island. And I will bring everyone back. When I was a kid, my parents died in a landslide, and I became an orphan. The villagers raised me like their own, and Yuna, she was always by my side. They were all kind-hearted people who couldn't ignore the pain of others. Ro let out a furious scream. All of them. How could I ever forget? I will go to that island and bring everyone back. Adal watched closely as the faint blue light radiating from the boy began to intensify. What is this amount of prana? The very air around Ro was beginning to warp. Prana, spiritual energy possessed by all living beings, often went unnoticed by most. But the gifted ones could harness it consciously. Normally it's transparent and colorless. However, for those with powerful prana, it manifests visibly. Some say there are entire tribes with especially unique prana. Adal finally understood. Tech. So this is the remnant of Babel, huh? At first he'd planned to protect the boy, but now it was obvious Ro would break free and make his own path in just a few years anyway. After thinking it over, Adal gripped the hilt of his sword. I don't know what's really going on here, but he drew his sword and hurled it down in front of Ro. The blade slammed into the ground at the boy's feet. If you want to go to the island, pick up that sword, Adal said. If I see potential, I'll train you. Without hesitation, Ro grabbed the weapon. Adal drew another blade for himself. As he gathered his energy, a brilliant red prana flared up around him, raw and intense. Attack me like you want to kill me, he shouted. Let me feel your bloodlust. Ro channeled all his strength into his swing and leapt forward. The blade came down hard, aimed right at Adal's body. He's a total rookie, Adal thought. But this pressure, and more than anything, that prana isn't ordinary. This kid, he's the real deal. For the first time, the blank gaze in Ro's eyes transformed. There was bloodlust in them now. A thunderous series of booms echoed through the small valley. After the clash, Adal explained the truth behind the strange phenomenon that had destroyed Tully Village. That thing was called the Island of the Gods, he said. Usually it floats in the middle of the sea. But sometimes it appears out of nowhere and swallows up entire landscapes, people, land, everything. I tried to stop it, but this time I was too late. He looked serious. There's a rumor that anyone engulfed by that light gets transported to the Island of the Gods. Ro's voice trembled. If I touch that light, what'll happen? I told you it's just a rumor, Adal replied. Even if you're still alive after that, no one knows what kind of fate you'd face. Then, what should I do? There's one official method, Adal said. Become a top-ranked adventurer, make it into the top 10. Adventurer rank? Adal nodded. Adventurers are professionals who explore and map out uncharted lands. It's the largest and most competitive ranking. And the ones at the top, they're monsters. If you can break into the top 10, you'll earn a chance to reach the Island of the Gods. He added. From the moment it was discovered, the Island of the Gods has always held the #1 spot on the danger zone rankings. Almost no one who goes there comes back. Do you still want to go? He asked. Ro's response was calm but resolute. Yes. Seeing the unwavering determination in the boy's eyes, Adol finally gave his answer. All right, I'll train you for 1 year. But I only teach swordsmanship. After that, use me as a stepping stone and climb the adventurer ranks yourself. Adol finally introduced himself. I'm Adol, top-ranked knight, the strongest among all knights. What's your name? The boy raised a hand and answered simply Ro. Then he reached out and clasped Adol's hand firmly. Adol smirked. Ro, I won't go easy on you. No matter what, remember this, you're the first person who ever managed to cut me, in a single blow. On Adol's chest, a long tear in his shirt served as undeniable proof. A year of hell had begun. Ro's hands and feet blistered, then burst open. His muscles tore apart, bones crushed, and blood poured from every opening on his body. After that, Adol stopped mentioning the Island of the Gods altogether. From then on, it was up to me to figure things out on my own. If I couldn't handle it, he was silently telling me to give up. But I believe the villagers are still alive. All I can do now is keep believing that. Why did the entire village disappear? What exactly is the Island of the Gods? To uncover the truth, I'll climb the adventurer rankings. Ro pushed through everything with sheer determination. 1 year later, he and Adol stood before a dirt path leading into the village. Adol asked, You ready? Ro replied. I've been ready for a long time. With his eyes closed, he remembered what Yuna once said, I want to become a top-ranked adventurer. Ro, let's go together. Let's go explore the world. Yuna, the one who had always dreamed of the world beyond, had vanished. And now I was the one setting off. Her dream, just for now, I'll carry it for her. Let's go, said Adol. Yeah, Ro replied. Then Adol remarked, You've gotten taller. Ro answered casually, still growing. The disciple of humanity's strongest knight, his journey toward the Island of the Gods had officially begun. Tully village belongs to the kingdom of Baltar. To reach the Island of the Gods, one must first travel to the royal capital, Trakista. At this moment, inside the Trakista branch of the Assessment Bureau, thick stacks of ledgers were piled high on Look's desk. The girl had fallen asleep face down on her paperwork. Outside, the crowd buzzed with excitement. Look over there. Come on, take a look. It's almost time. Suddenly, Look jerked awake, shouting, Crap. I overslept. He dashed into the hallway, where he ran into Mina, who immediately scolded him. Don't tell me you stayed up all night looking at the rankings again. Look replied without shame, What's wrong with that? I work for the Assessment Bureau. That's exactly why you shouldn't be overworking yourself, Mina shot back. You need to take care of your health. You're not stuck behind a desk like me. You make decisions that affect a lot of people's ranks, right? The Assessment Bureau, an elite profession that sends representatives around the world to evaluate rankers and update their rankings fairly. It demands vast knowledge, deep expertise, and sharp judgment to accurately measure strength and skill. Anyone hoping to become an assessor must pass rigorous tests. It's a role reserved only for the chosen few, and is considered one of the toughest jobs in the world. Look shrugged modestly. I may work at the bureau, but I'm still a low-level employee. If I want to do what I really want, I need a promotion. And for that, I've got to work even harder. Curious, Mina asked. And what is it you really want to do? Grinning wide, Look replied. Oh, a little bit of everything. She gave him a sly look. If you want to climb the ranks at the bureau, the best way is to become the personal agent of a talented ranker, right? Look sighed. True, but there aren't many rankers who catch my eye. Aha, see. Your standards are way too high, Mina teased. It's not that, Look said plainly. It's just that most rankers nowadays are too half-hearted. Back in the day, the ranking wars were brutal. Now the top spots on every leaderboard barely change. If that's the case, what are we even doing at the bureau anymore? The value of a ranking lies in how often it's updated. You're such a ranking freak, Mina chuckled. Guilty as charged, Look replied proudly. Hearing that, she could only sigh in defeat. That's a serious case you've got there. Look mumbled to himself. Seriously, isn't there anyone out there? Someone who can shake up the entire system? Opening the door, Mina gestured and said, That person might already be in here. They looked out at a packed lecture hall, full of applicants. Look asked, This is the third time we've held the adventurer ranking registration exam this year, right? Is it always this crowded? Usually it's less, Mina replied. But the number of applicants has shot up since the Azaban forest was added to the danger zone list 2 months ago. Ah, that explains it, Look muttered. Mina stood at the podium, scanning the crowd. There are quite a few promising ones this time, she observed. Like that guy mercenary ranker, Owl Darkis, currently ranked 753. He's the leader of the Red Wolf Mercenary Company, a hotshot up-and-coming group gaining national recognition. Over there is Eddie Markman, an archer ranked 402. The Markman family is famous for their archery lineage. His father held the No. 2 spot in his prime, and his older brother is currently ranked 7th. Eddie might be young, but there are already rumors his arrow speed is in the double digits. The kid's got potential. There are plenty of other standouts, too, she added. Like that one. Look peered at the candidates and guessed. Merchant ranker. Knight ranker. Sailor ranker. And a scout ranker? Mina's eyes widened. Who? You got all of them right, he chuckled. I may not look like it, but I'm from the appraisal bureau. Just a quick glance, and I can already tell what ranking someone's in. The adventurer ranker title was extremely useful, so much so that many people eventually sought to obtain it. It was also a mandatory requirement to access certain restricted zones, like that forest over there. Suddenly the bell outside chimed. Mina rushed over and called out, "Someone's here to register. Please wait a moment." She stepped up to the reception desk and smiled. "Welcome." Ro gave a polite bow and said softly, "I was instructed to come here to register for ranking." Mina's tone brightened. "Ah, yes, that's right. The ranking system is managed and operated by our appraisal bureau. Our staff are dispatched all over to assess rankers' achievements and abilities, which is how we determine rankings. Updating your rank can be done anywhere, as long as a bureau officer is present. However, initial registration must be done at one of our branches." "I'd like to register for the adventurer ranking," Rose said. Mina smiled warmly. "Perfect timing. The entrance exam's about to start. Would you like to take part?" "Yes." She pulled out a registration form and placed it on the counter. "Then please fill in your name and the required information here. The exam fee is 3,000 del." Ro quickly completed the form and paid the fee. Mina nodded approvingly. "All done. Thank you. Please wait in that room over there. Your examinee number is 53. As Ro walked past Look, the man gave him a sideways glance and scoffed to himself. So there are still country bumpkins out there who don't even know what the appraisal bureau is. Mina agreed with a sigh. Yeah, it's been a while since I've had to explain it from the beginning. She turned to her colleague. All right, can you help get things ready for the exam? Look watched Rose back as he disappeared into the waiting room and replied, sure. Working indoors once in a while isn't bad. Mina narrowed her eyes. Are you being sarcastic? I'm being serious, he said plainly. Later, Mina stood on a small platform and addressed the candidates. We'll now begin the registration exam for the Adventurer Ranking Board. There are 3 parts to the exam, a written test, a combat test, and a final section that will be explained when we get to it. Whether you pass or fail will be based on your total score across all 3. Even if you do poorly in one section, you can still pass if you do well in the others, so don't give up midway. With that, she gave a signal. Let's begin the written exam now. Tension filled the room as candidates stared at their test sheets. This is tough, someone muttered. The scope's too broad. Time flew by, and soon the written exam was over. Mina addressed them again. The combat test will take place in the forest outside the village in 2 hours. Once grading is done, we'll escort you there. Please wait here in the meantime. She carried a stack of completed test papers into the office and called out, Hey, help me grade these. Look responded enthusiastically, okay. They focused on grading. Look picked up a paper and read the number. Number 53. Ah, that dead-eyed guy from earlier. He began reading and froze. Wait, question 1. Name 3 sea routes to Yotsuba. Answer, don't know. Don't know. Don't know. Question 2. Identify the descendant species of the magical beast shown in the illustration using the symbol, 2 or 3. Answer, all incorrect. Look stared at the page, stunned. Everything is wrong. He felt his energy drain and muttered bitterly, they should really think about the poor souls who have to deal with these backwater ceremonial exams. 2 hours later, the combat portion of the exam began. Mina explained the task. Your objective is to find and submit the items listed on this board. If you want to score high, refer to the point chart on the right. However, you are strictly forbidden from fighting each other. Whoever touches an item first has the right to claim it. Someone nearby said, I'm pretty confident in my knowledge of herbs. Another added, I'm good at catching bugs. With a signal from Mina, the test began. The group of candidates charged into the forest. Mina exhaled and stretched. Finally, a little break. I wonder how many will pass this time. Look, guessed, probably around half. Once they get moving like this, it's easier to tell who's who. But I have to say everyone this time seems pretty capable. Watching the candidates search carefully for the listed items, Mina asked, anyone catch your eye? Look shook his head. Unfortunately, no one stood out this time either. Just then, Owl Darkus returned. Am I the first? He handed Mina a bundle of stones. Rigel ore. That's 120 points, she said. Then she raised an eyebrow. There's still time left. You're already done? Yeah, I'm going to pass anyway, he replied. She explained, that's true. But if you score well in this section, it'll boost your registered rank. Owl replied flatly, doesn't matter to me. My real job is being a mercenary. I don't care that much about the adventurer ranking. Just then, Eddie Markman returned. Spotting Owl, he called out, what the thought I was first. Mina examined the item he brought in. Flockbird tail feather, 180 points. Eddie raised an eyebrow. Isn't that kinda high? Flockbird shows up on our dinner table all the time. Owl scoffed. Tech. Showing off over a bird feather. Eddie casually flexed. I'm not showing off. But you know, that bird flies silently at 500 kilometers per hour. Bet you can't even see it with the naked eye. Owl wasn't the least bit rattled. Sorry for not noticing. Maybe you'd be better off as a clown, Eddie snapped. Wanna test that out? He just chuckled. Gladly. Watching the two bicker, Mina let out a helpless sigh. Rankers sure are sensitive. Look, on the other hand, looked amused. That's what makes them fun to watch. Suddenly, the sound of heavy footsteps interrupted them. Everyone turned their heads, stunned. Mina gasped. Ro emerged from the forest, dragging an enormous bear behind him. He dropped the beast in front of the examiner and said earnestly, I didn't know how to extract the red bear's gallbladder, so I brought the whole thing. Can I submit it like this? Mina nodded. Yes, that works. No need to dissect it. Red bear gallbladder, 300 points. The other examinees stared in surprise. Who the heck is that guy? Took down a red bear solo. Look asked, wait, how did you even know that beast was a red bear? Your written test was a disaster. Ro replied, that thing shows up near my village a lot, so I recognized it. Village? Look echoed. Nearby, a few candidates started murmuring. You didn't see him fight. Actually, I did, kind of. But honestly, I'm not even sure I saw it happen. He drew his sword, and in the blink of an eye, the bear dropped. The description hit looked like a jolt, and he started to view Ro in a very different light. 1 hour later, the candidates were gathered in the underground training grounds. Mina addressed the group. Now, who can tell me what the greatest threat to adventurers is? Magic beasts? Someone guessed. No, she replied. Humans. She began explaining the next test. As adventurers, you'll be exploring uncharted lands. Naturally, that means going into isolated areas. And in such places, the threats often come from bandits or pirates. Strength is essential for surviving these dangers. So, the final exam is a simulated combat match. You'll be fighting each other. She reassured them, don't worry too much. This is a skills assessment, not strictly win or lose. It won't be the only factor in whether you pass. Eddie muttered, makes sense. If they told us earlier, someone might have tried to cheat during the practical phase. That's probably why they kept it secret till now. A bulky candidate named Chad walked over to Owl and threw an arm over his shoulder. Hey you, fight me. Owl sneered. You're the guy who only picked up a rock during the last test, right? I read the mercenary rankings. Full of blowhards and tough talkers. Chad suddenly roared, you're just ranked 3rd. Acting all smug. I'll crush you. And launched a punch at Owl. Without a word, Owl didn't even dodge. He simply pulled out his sword's hilt and smashed it backward right into Chad's jaw. The big guy collapsed, mouth bloodied and teeth scattered. Owl said calmly, sorry. got a little upset at being insulted. Mina adjusted her glasses and muttered, "Well, he failed a while ago anyway. I'll pretend I didn't see that." Chad was hauled out of the testing area. Even if he tried to make a scene, it was clear to everyone he was an idiot. In the major ranking lists, anyone in the top 3 was practically a monster. Eddie commented, "You seem calm most of the time. Who knew you had such a temper?" Owl snapped, "Don't need to hear that from you." Mina thought for a moment. So Owl's opponent is Look suddenly called out, "Hey." She turned. "What is it?" Look pointed at Ro. "Can I pick his opponent?" She looked surprised. "Huh? Well, I guess so, but why?" And so the simulated combat test began. In this phase, the candidates' true abilities came to light. Everyone gave it their all to prove themselves. Match 8, contestants 27 and 41 versus 53. "Wait, what?" Owl asked the examiner. Eddie muttered, "Man, haven't been underestimated like this in a while." Mina called out, "Hold on, Look, are you sure about this?" Look responded firmly, "Positive. If my eyes aren't wrong, that guy's a monster." The 3 contestants immediately stepped onto the battlefield, and the spectators watched with intense curiosity. Everyone was eager to see how this match would play out. Ro maintained a cold expression. Owl looked confident, and Eddie was clearly no pushover. Owl, darkest leader of the Red Wolf Mercenary Corps, was no ordinary fighter. Just last year, the Red Wolf Corps made headlines when they wiped out the entire Khmer Mar Mafia, which was ranked 62nd on the Underworld leaderboard. Rumor had it that Owl himself took down 7 of their enforcers, including the Mafia boss, all by himself. Then there was Eddie Markman, heir to the prestigious Markman family of archers. He received elite training from his own father, a former second-ranked archer on the leaderboard. By the age of 5, Eddie had already made his debut on the rankings, and was recognized as a prodigy across the archery world. Facing off against these 2 powerhouses was an unknown teenage boy. "Match, begin," Mina shouted. Eddie immediately fired an arrow at blinding speed, but Ro raised his sword and cleanly sliced it in half. Owl charged in for a head-on strike, his twin swords clashing violently against Ro's blade. As a disciple of the strongest knight among humans, Ro's swordplay was lightning fast and overwhelmingly powerful. Owl parried his strikes with all his might, holding his ground without flinching. Spectators were stunned. "Hey, did you see anything just now?" one asked. "I could only hear the sound," another replied. Seizing a brief opening, Ro disarmed Owl, sending his sword flying. Just as he moved in to finish the fight, a volley of arrows came flying in. Ro quickly turned and intercepted them, splitting one arrow in 2 with his sword, and deflecting the other 2 off course. One of them struck the wall, grazing a contestant's neck and leaving him pale with fear. The battle paused for a moment. Owl blurted out, "A swordsman? No, is he at night tier?" Eddie replied, "I was thinking the same. But I've never seen anyone like him." Ro asked, "You 2 are ranked on the leaderboard too?" Eddie nodded, "Archer ranking -402. Owl chimed in, "Soldier ranking -753. Ro took a breath and focused his energy. "I see. Then if I beat the 2 of you, that should bump me into the triple digits." A vibrant surge of prana exploded around him, glowing bright green across the arena. The air pressure skyrocketed, sending a wave of dread through the crowd. Owl's expression twisted in fear. "What is this?" His aura, it suddenly spiked through the roof. Look stood frozen. "This is prana. So massive, it's visible to the naked eye." Eddie drew his bow again, eyes narrowing. "Rankings aren't based on class alone. I might be 402 among archers, but in the sharpshooter category where accuracy is everything, I'm ranked 78. Just as he finished speaking, a blur flashed past him. Eddie collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Ro had moved like a bolt of lightning. No one even saw how he landed the blow. Owl stood frozen, unsure of what to do. Ro advanced without hesitation. His eyes were intense and unforgiving. Owl hesitated, and in an instant Ro appeared behind him, cold steel at his throat. "Well, wait. I surrender." Owl cried out. "I've still got a job after this. If I pass out like that kid, it'll be a pain." Hearing this, Ro lowered his sword and sheathed it. "I see," he replied calmly. Owl wiped the sweat off his brow, glancing at Ro with awe and fear. What a monster. Who the hell is this guy? The rest of the contestants were visibly shaken. Holy crap, he just took down 2 people who are already ranked. Even Look was left speechless. Mina finally called out, "That's enough. The winner is contestant number 53. Just then, she noticed Look running off in a hurry. Huh, where's he going? Look rushed into the archives and powered up a computer. The Appraisal Bureau's database displayed the profile of contestant number 53. Name, Ro Tully. 17 years old. Never registered on any official ranking. With skills like that. He reread the data carefully. Now that I think about it, he really didn't seem to know much about the Bureau at all. If he lived somewhere remote, I guess that'd explain it. No criminal record, no ties to any special religious groups either. Look's hands trembled slightly. Jackpot. A talent like this buried all these years? He bolted out the door and shouted at the top of his lungs, "Ro Tully. Let me be your exclusive appraiser." But by the time he got outside, Ro was already surrounded by a horde of eager appraisers. A young woman chimed in. "Hey you. You should totally let me be your exclusive appraiser." An older man cut in. "Hold on, wait a sec, clearly, I'm the better fit for you." Look froze in place. Damn, one step too late. Frustration surged inside him. Idiots. You're not supposed to throw out exclusive partnership offers before even investigating someone's background properly. Meanwhile, Ro was still clueless about what was going on. He asked hesitantly. What's an exclusive appraiser?" Look darted forward like a gust of wind. "Let me explain," he said breathlessly. An exclusive appraiser is someone officially assigned to a specific ranker. Their job is to keep that person's rank up to date on a regular basis. Normally, to update rankings, you have to wait for an official from the Appraisal Bureau to show up and do an evaluation before you can level up. But if you've got an exclusive appraiser, you can update your ranking on the spot whenever, wherever. He fumbled through his coat pocket and pulled out a compact device. Also, appraisers carry a special tool. This right here is a rank telegram, or ranktel for short. It lets you receive and send real-time updates about your rank and status. Then, with extra emphasis, he added, if you're serious about climbing the ranks fast, you're gonna want a skilled exclusive appraiser by your side. Ro raised his eyebrows. Climb the ranks fast, huh? Then he turned and looked around at the crowd of hopeful appraisers. Alright, here's my condition. Among all of you, can anyone get me into the top 10 of the adventurer rankings? Everyone fell silent at Ro's words. One person blurted out, top 10 in the adventurer rankings? That list is full of monsters. Another chimed in, his sword skills are impressive, sure, but just that alone isn't enough to make it to the top 10. Ro didn't say a word. He stood quietly for a moment while Look studied his expression. When it became clear that no one could meet his demand, Ro turned and began walking away. Ah, wait. Look shouted, bolting after him all the way to the gate. Ro was moving fast, forcing Look to sprint just to keep up. Huffing, she called out, "Ro. Why do you want to make it into the top 10 adventurer rankings?" "That's none of your business," he replied flatly. "Then make it my business," Look shot back. "Let me be your exclusive appraiser. I'll get you into the top 10 adventurer rankings." Ro kept walking and declined without hesitation. "I'm not dragging a kid into danger." "What? A kid?" Look yelled. "Excuse me. This kid happens to be a certified exclusive appraiser. And you're one to talk, you're practically a kid yourself." Ro added bluntly, "Even if you weren't, I still wouldn't hire you. I don't want to get involved with anyone." Look met his eyes, firm and unwavering. Her voice rang out, "There's something I have to do. For me, this is a mission I have to complete, even if it costs me my life. And to do that, Ro, I want to team up with you." Ro stopped walking. He turned back and looked at her, a flicker of recognition flashing in his eyes. He remembered the conviction in his own voice when he once told a doll, "I will go to that island. And I'll bring everyone back." He nodded slowly. "Same here. I've got something I have to do too." Bathed in the golden light of the setting sun, the two of them stood still, no longer strangers but comrades. With confidence, Look declared, "Look immediate. I'll make you a top-ranked ranker." He smiled faintly and responded, "Ro Tully." Then, the two shook hands, sealing their partnership. After that, Look took him back to the inn. It was a small but tidy and clean room with a balcony overlooking the street. Look asked, "So? Pretty fancy, right?" Grinning, he added, "I rented it for a few days, so go ahead and use it as your base for now." Ro replied, "Thanks, you're too kind." Look threw his bag onto the bed. "No big deal." Then he suddenly yelled, But I can't believe there's a probation phase after that god-tier performance earlier. Ro calmly said, sorry, just playing it safe. With no other choice, Look gave in. Fimph. Fine. I'll show you how passionate I am within a week. By then, we'll see who's the rookie here. He put on a pleading face and acted like future Ro. Wow, Look. Please be my exclusive appraiser. Ro replied flatly, I hope so. Look snapped, don't be so indifferent. You're super focused when fighting, but otherwise, how should I put it? Kinda spaced out. Ro agreed, I've been told that before. Just then, the Ranktul device chimed. Look took it out and said, oh, the exam results are in. Here's your ranking. The screen displayed Ro Tully Adventurer Ranking, 2728. Look cheered, congrats. You passed the Adventurer Ranking test. Surprised. First-time applicants rarely make it into the 200s. That's seriously impressive. Ro, however, wasn't satisfied. I was expecting triple digits. Look looked stunned. Huh? Why? Ro explained. Because both opponents I beat during the exam had 3-digit ranks. Eddie the Archer ranked 402. Owl the Soldier ranked 753. Look nodded. Ah, well, the Adventurer board has way more applicants than the others, so competition's stiffer. The other boards, no matter how strong you are, have their limits. Adventurer ranking isn't just based on your class. Take Ro Tully, for example. Adventurer ranking, 2728. Swordsman ranking, 58. That swordsman ranking of yours. That's high. Ro asked so. Look replied, so what do you mean so? From the appraisal bureau's perspective, that number reflects raw talent. Ro then wondered, the two I fought earlier, did they have rankings on other boards too? Look nodded and brought up their stats. Owl Darkus. Soldier ranking, 753. Swordsman ranking, 521. Sweeper ranking, 209. Courier ranking, 2831. Reliable leader ranking, 86. Eddie Markman, Archer ranking, 402. Sharpshooter ranking, 78. Scout ranking, 211. Mushroom cultivation ranking, 19. Look explained. A person can hold multiple ranks across boards. That means more job opportunities. So, I think you should register for more rankings too. Ro declined, I'm not looking for work. Look replied casually, we haven't known each other long, but I think I've figured you out a bit. Basically, you want to reach the top 10 of the Adventurer board using a shortcut, right? Then he said. If that's the case, go to the Divine Island. Ro looked surprised. How do you know? Look answered slowly. Because that's the only special privilege granted to top 10 adventurers. He continued. As for your reason, will you tell me once your trial period ends? Ro agreed, fine. Look smiled. And when that time comes, I'll tell you my situation too. Ro nodded, fair enough. That sounds reasonable. Look at it, of course fairness is important, but my situation isn't something easy to explain to someone who's just joined the ranking system. Suddenly, Look's expression turned serious. In a low voice, they said, what I'm really investigating is the dark side of the ranking system. Ro blinked. What did you just say? But Look quickly shook their head. Nothing. Never mind. Switching the topic, they asked, anyway, how are you that strong? Especially your swordsmanship, it's not something you pick up overnight, right? Ro answered honestly. A year ago, I became the disciple of a knight named Adol. At the sound of that name, Look practically screamed, Adol. They grabbed Ro by the collar and shouted in excitement, you mean the Adol? The top-ranked knight. Ro recalled his master's introduction, I am Adol. Top of the knight rankings. The strongest knight in all of humanity. He replied casually. Yeah, that's what he said. Look let out a long okay, clearly overwhelmed. Internally they were shaken. Ro added, but even if I'm his disciple, it's only been a year. Look fired back. Even if it's just a year, that's huge news. And what's with that deadpan face of yours? They quickly pulled up Adol's profile and showed it to Ro. This guy's famous for not teaching anyone swordsmanship. Tons of people tried to become his disciples, and he rejected them all. If there were a ranking for most disciple rejections, he'd be number 1. Rumor has it he's planning to pass down his skills to whoever reaches the top of the knight ranking in the next generation. That's why so many knights are grinding their ranks like crazy. But to think you are his successor. If the other knights hear this, they'll probably faint. Ro was taken aback. He's that big of a deal. He recalled Adol's words again. I am the strongest knight in humanity. Look nodded firmly. Of course. He's ranked number 1, which means yeah, strongest in the world. Then Ro muttered, almost to himself, but I defeated him. With my own sword. He remembered Adol telling him, you're the first to ever land a blow on me. Look was stunned speechless. Then they cried out, no way. No way that's true. You're totally spacey most of the time, and now you're saying you beat him? That makes no sense. I need to recheck your data. They opened up the system, but all they found was a barebones profile, Ro Tully. Even digging into the ranking database yielded nothing more, it was just a newly registered name. Then Look asked, wait, is Tully an alias or something? That question took Ro back to a conversation with Adol. The old knight had once asked him, Ro, what's your surname? Back then, Ro didn't know the answer. Adol had murmured, cultural difference, maybe. He then told him, if you want to reach the Divine Island the fastest way possible, from this day forward, you are Ro Tully. The risk is high, but if it works, the clues will come to you first. Staring into the blinding sunlight on the horizon, Ro had responded with a simple, understood. Now, standing in front of Look, he answered firmly, it's not an alias. Tully is the noble family title I was given. Look paused, slightly stunned. I see. Thanks for telling me. They sat down on the bed with a satisfied sigh. Well, that's it for my duties as an appraiser. Time for a break. I'm taking off the hat. Look removed their hat and let out a deep breath. Ro stared in shock. With a nervous voice he asked, wait, you're a girl? Look stared back at him wide-eyed. What? Are you just now realizing that? Ro realized his blunder and mumbled, sorry. Her face turned beet red with anger, and she exploded, all you can say is sorry. The next morning, sunlight bathed the narrow alley as the sun climbed high into the sky. Inside their rented room, Look sat reading the newspaper. When Ro came down the stairs, she greeted him cheerfully, you're up early. He replied simply, just getting some water. She glanced at his blank expression. Huh? Don't tell me you're still half asleep. It's nothing, Ro said. Good morning, Look. She smiled. Yeah, morning. Look quickly tied her hair up and put on her cap. Let's grab some breakfast. It's gonna be a long journey, but today's the first step. She winked. Alright. Let's kick off the strategy meeting to break into the top 10 of the adventurer rankings. To climb the adventurer rankings, you needed to rack up achievements during expeditions. Taking a bite of her sandwich, Look explained, exploration or territory reclamation, those are the basics. They're optional, but I recommend starting with official requests. A lot of people rely on adventurers to investigate or retrieve things. Those quests come with rewards too, perfect for beginners. You can accept quests at the appraisal bureau, she continued, or through the guilds, depending on the country. But if I'm around, all you need is this. She tapped her ranktel and scrolled through some listings. Ro smiled. This ranktel system's pretty handy. Look pleased. Right? If I become your personal appraiser, you can use it all you want. I'll think about it, he replied calmly. That answer left her speechless for a moment. The two huddled together over the ranktel, reviewing the available tasks. Is there a quest that boosts your rank fast? Ro asked. Look opened several folders. Just pick one with a high difficulty level. Quests issued through the bureau always show how much they'll impact your ranking once completed. Like this one. Ro scanned the list and made his choice. Then I'll take the first one on the list. Look leaned in to read the details carefully. Let's see. Retrieve the hidden treasure in the sunken temple of Lokiana. Danger zone, grade 7. Suddenly, Look shot to her feet, yelling, no way. There is absolutely no way you can handle this right now. Ro replied firmly, how would we know if we don't try? I know, she snapped. Even without you trying, I already know. Trust an appraiser's eye, will you? This quest is way beyond your current level. You'll die before you even get the chance to climb the rankings. But Ro refused to back down. Still, let me try, he said firmly. The Island of Gods is classified as a rank 1 danger zone, right? If I can't push through here, I'll never make it there. Look was taken aback. She hadn't expected him to be this stubborn. Way more hard-headed than I thought. I need to convince him somehow, she thought. Right then, a young man approached with a laid-back grin. Looks like you two are stuck on something. he said casually. Look turned and gasped, Loud-san. Been a while, look. The man replied. Ro looked at him warily. Who's he? With a proud smile, Look said, let me introduce you, this is Loud Blowerward. He's insanely strong. Currently ranked 11th on the Adventurers leaderboard. Ro froze. Rank 11. That number hit hard. He recalled what Adol had said, the Adventurers board is the most crowded one. And the top ranks. All monsters. If this man was in the top ranks, then he was one of those monsters. And with one more step he'd be eligible to challenge the Island of Gods. Look suddenly called out, perfect timing. Loud-san, I've got a favor to ask. Loud shrugged casually. Sure, what's up? Without hesitation she shouted, Ro, please beat him. Later in the training grounds, Look and Ro stood waiting. Eventually Loud strolled in, a long spear in hand. Sorry to keep you waiting, he said. Didn't expect to get challenged today. Had to borrow a weapon, this spear's a bit light. But it'll do. Ro bowed politely. My name is Ro Tully, sir. Loud chuckled. No need to be so formal. You'll find that the Adventurers board doesn't care much about titles. Just strength. I've had my ranking updated by Look before. She's good, knows her stuff. And more importantly, she's got this fiery belief in building the most accurate rankings out there. You don't find that kind of passion often in appraisers. He twirled the spear in one hand and, mimicking Look's voice, said with a grin. Now go teach this stubborn newbie some respect. She seems to care about you, you know. Ro wasn't swayed by the flattery. He focused on Loud, analyzing him. Just looking at him, I can already feel his strength. If I charge in carelessly, he'll pierce me before I even get close. From the sideline, Look shouted Ro. This is a golden opportunity. You need to experience just how vast this world really is at least once. He lowered his gaze for a brief moment. The vastness of the world. He had seen it. The memory of the Island of Gods decimating Tully village was etched deep into his heart. Raising his head, Ro pointed his blade at Loud. A fierce wind swirled as his prana flared up, dense and powerful. The duel between Tully, ranked 2728, and Loud Blowerward, ranked 11 among adventurers, officially began. Both fighters launched forward at once, clashing in a flurry of attacks. Ro poured all his strength into his sword, unleashing a rapid series of strikes. Loud moved like lightning, deftly sidestepping while assessing his opponent. He's channeling prana into his armor and releasing it through his slashes. Is he increasing his speed by wrapping prana around his limbs? Loud handled his spear with masterful precision, but something about Ro's swordsmanship caught his attention. That technique, it can't be. The Sword Saint style only has one successor. There's no way the old man would pass down such a sacred sword style to some kid like this. Suddenly Ro appeared behind him. Now's not the time to be spacing out, right? He said. Loud instinctively swung his spear back, blocking Ro's blade just in time. Loud smiled calmly. Oh, I'm not spacing out. I'm enjoying myself. He coughed lightly. He's a seasoned fighter, no doubt. The duel intensified, weapons clashing in a rapid, ear-splitting rhythm. Just looking at his prana output, he already surpasses me in some ways, Loud thought. And that shimmering glow. He suddenly leapt backward, narrowing his eyes. What race are you from? He asked. Ro blinked. Race. Loud grinned. Playing dumb won't help. That kind of prana glow, it's not something you achieve with training alone. He twirled his spear casually. But whatever. If you won't say it, I'll force it out of you. He slammed his spear into the ground and asked, You can use incantation arts, right? Ro looked more confused than ever. Incantation what? Loud began to concentrate. His golden prana flared out in waves as he muttered an ancient chant under his breath. Wild steed tears through the veil of storm. Across the mountains, chasing the breath of spring. Beneath the sun, copper hills divide. Reflections swirl 1,000-fold, seeking the stillness, turning the gears of fate. As the spell activated, a magical formation spread beneath his feet. Illusory swords filled the air, their power crackling and overwhelming. The pressure was immense, so much so that Look, watching from the sidelines, was struggling to breathe. But Loud wasn't finished. He continued racing through sky-bent trails, soaring in silence. The tribe's tongue seals the madman's howl. He glanced at Ro, who still hadn't moved. Go on, Loud warned. Use your own incantation. Otherwise you're dead. Ro remained frozen. He stared at Loud, completely blank. He had never even heard of incantations before. Loud's formation was complete. He gently adjusted his glasses, and Ro let out an exclamation, "This is it." Loud extended his hand forward, and a barrage of illusory swords shot straight toward Ro. Sensing the danger of the technique, Ro braced himself and fought back with all his might. A sword aura grazed his arm, leaving a small tear. Ro grunted in pain. Loud remarked, "That won't do. A regular sword can't block this spell." With a snap of his fingers, swords rained down like a storm, forcing Ro into a desperate struggle to defend himself. He strained to hold his ground against the onslaught. A doll had once told him, "Ro, you're still pretty clumsy when it comes to controlling prana. But once you get the hang of it, you'll gradually master the techniques." Back then, Ro hadn't even understood what techniques meant. A doll had raised his sword, examining it closely, and demonstrated the first move, the simplest technique, Tempest Flash. Now, in this moment, Ro channeled his energy, pouring prana into his sword, and unleashed a powerful counterattack. A terrifying surge of force hurtled toward Loud. "Surprised," Loud muttered, "too fast." He spun the spear in his hands, blocking the incoming energy. As the sword aura dissipated, Ro appeared right in front of him. Loud continued his assault with the illusory swords, leaping back a few steps to assume a defensive stance. Boom, boom, boom. Ro countered fiercely. At this point, Loud heightened his guard. He delivered a slash so swift that the naked eye could barely follow it. But then, Loud poured more strength into his arm and hurled his spear at Ro. Ro raised his sword to block, and the spear's tip clashed against the blade, yet its trajectory remained unchanged. In an instant, it knocked Ro backward, sending his sword flying from his grip. Before Ro could react, Loud exclaimed, "Impressive." But with another snap of his fingers, he added, "Still, this wall is too high." All the illusory swords turned toward Ro. Both Look and Ro felt a surge of anxiety. A glint of killing intent flashed in Loud's eyes as he growled, "Don't underestimate the adventurer rankings." Ro scrambled to get up, but it was too late. The illusory swords rained down like a torrent. "Damn it!" Ro cursed as explosions erupted, boom, 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 kicking up dirt and dust in a massive cloud. Ro lay sprawled in the center of a large crater. The destructive power of the technique was staggering. The air fell eerily silent. The victor, Loud Browerward, rank 11 adventurer. Loud stepped forward to face Look and asked, "Satisfied?" The girl smiled. "Yes, thank you." Ro, lying defeated, likely understood now. Loud's tone grew colder. "You sure have a way with words. Even until the very end you believed that kid could win, did you?" Look replied softly, "I just thought it was possible." Loud continued. "And the basis for that belief?" "It's because Hez Adel's disciple, right?" Look answered quietly. "You noticed, huh?" Loud spoke calmly. "I knew at the moment I saw that super speed slash. That's a technique from the Swordmaster School. But is that really okay? The Sacred Sword School is only passed down to a single successor. It's the strongest swordsmanship, inherited by high-ranking knights across generations. Yet that kid received it. For a knight, having their creed taken like that is as good as having their faith stolen." Hearing this, Look clutched her head and groaned, "You're probably right. Maybe I should stop Ro from crossing paths with any high-ranking knights from now on." Loud nodded in agreement. "That'd be wise. At worst he could lose his life. If he operates as a high-ranking knight, things might go smoother." But Look suddenly recalled something Ro had once said. "Me too, I have something I absolutely have to do." That stubborn kid would never accept such a suggestion. She turned to Loud and said, "That? Yeah, probably impossible." The girl suddenly shifted to a different topic. "Oh, but actually the reason I believe in Ro isn't because of the holy sword style. It's because he said he landed a clean hit on a doll and I believe him." Loud Sen exclaimed in shock, "A clean hit? On a doll? That's impossible. With his current level there's no way he could have done that." Look nodded in agreement. "I think so too. But Ro isn't the type to lie. There must have been some kind of twist to it." Loud Sen glanced at the boy. The holy sword style was already a surprise, but from what I sensed, that prana flow. He suddenly walked toward his spear. "Loud Sen?" Look called out. He picked it up and said slowly, "That kid might have used a spell too. If he had gone all out with that, I might have lost." A girl stood by the fireplace. cooking while humming the melody of a poem. Suddenly, an old woman burst through the door and barked, "Hey! What are you humming? That stupid poem is the reason we can't go outside, you know that? Don't ever let it leave your lips again. Got it?" The girl immediately fell silent and bowed her head. "I'm sorry, Ro." Ro jolted awake. He found himself lying on a small bed, his body covered in injuries. Sitting up, he asked, "Where am I?" Look's voice rang out in relief. "You're awake," she exclaimed. "This is the infirmary of the Evaluation Bureau, Ro. You've been out the entire day." "The whole day?" he asked. She nodded. "Yep. It was like someone flipped your off switch. The doctor said you were suffering from severe mental fatigue. I don't know what kind of burden you're carrying, but aren't you pushing yourself too hard?" Ro remembered Lao Tzu's illusionary sword. That technique had taken him down in one strike, and after that, everything went black. After a brief pause, he muttered, "Maybe you're right." Look stared at him for a moment before suddenly leaning in and asking, "Ro, there's something important I want to talk to you about. Have you ever heard of incantations?" He shook his head. "No," Look explained, "incantations are a special way of using prana. Only certain races can wield them, and many of the top-ranked warriors are skilled in their use." "Is Loud one of them?" Ro asked. She nodded. "Yes, he's a warrior from the Browerword tribe. They're a battle-oriented race, excellent hunters, and live in the southern marshlands. Because their incantations are usually passed down orally in poetic form, people refer to them as incantations. It's also tied to genetics, so it's really difficult to learn them once you're an adult." It was the first time Ro had heard of such a thing. "Incantations, huh?" Look gave him a serious look. "Loud Sen seemed to think you might possess one too. Do you have any clue?" "Any clue?" Ro dug through his memories. That girl in his dream, she had been humming a poem too. He looked up and answered, "I think I might." Look's eyes lit up. "That's great. Incantations are an invaluable asset to any high-level fighter. I'm even more convinced now, Ro. You have what it takes to become a top-ranked warrior." She quickly pulled out her ranktel and started scrolling. "Which is why I've already found the perfect mission for you. It's an investigation of Azaban Forest. 2 months ago, it was reclassified as the 48th most dangerous zone during an ecological survey." "An ecological survey?" Ro asked. "So, I just need to investigate the wildlife or something?" "That's part of it," Look replied. "But recently, people have been disappearing in that forest one after another. Adventurers who accepted similar missions have vanished without a trace, one by one. It started with those around level 1000, but lately even someone ranked in the top hundreds disappeared. If you can uncover the cause of these disappearances, I estimate you could climb 200 ranks. You're currently at 2729, which means you could reach around 2500. But the risks are a lot higher." Ro stood up at once. "I'll take the mission. You recommended it because you believe I can handle it, right?" "Of course I do," Look replied confidently. "So let's get the paperwork done and accept it officially." She added, "Just so you know, there are protected species in Azaban Forest that are off limits for hunting, and some areas are restricted. I'll be there too, so we should be fine. But Ro, you should still be careful." He suddenly asked, "What if I break the rules?" Look replied with a serious tone, "Your ranking will drop. No matter how skilled you are, if you recklessly damage the ecosystem or repeatedly fail missions, your reputation as an adventurer will collapse. Your rank is your credibility, Ro." He nodded. "I understand." Look quickly worked through the system. "All right, the mission is accepted." She grinned. "Ro, this mission is your fresh start. It's the first step to shooting up the adventurer rankings. Let's give it everything we've got." He smiled faintly. "Yeah." Scene transition. The wild, dense Azaban forest. Dalkin was taking out a low-ranked adventurer, someone who had seen him breaking the rules. He wrapped his hands around the man's neck and snarled in fury, making sure he wouldn't be able to act on what he had seen. A man nearby exclaimed, "You killed another one?" Dalkin scoffed, "So what? The Appraisal Bureau doesn't even bother with small fry like this." He looked at the animal cage, stomped on the lid with a loud thud, and growled, "Trying to rank up the honest way is just plain stupid." Dalkin sat down and eyed the creature inside, a small beast with pristine white fur. He grinned with excitement. "A white unicorn? Just selling that horn alone will boost me into the triple-digit ranks." The man with the steel gray beard calmly said, "Strength alone isn't enough to climb the adventurer ranks. I exist for those who've suffered from injustices like this." His name was Rosso Crewell, ranked 7th on the smuggler leaderboard. But Dalkin responded with wild arrogance, like I'd ever give up such a lucrative hunting ground. He burst into laughter and declared with pride, "I'll make it to the top 100 for sure." Dalkin Iris rank 672 on the adventurer leaderboard. Ro and Look arrived at the entrance to Azaban Forest. The gatekeeper stopped them and said, "I need to check your rank." Ro handed over his card, and after a careful look, the guard read aloud, "Adventurer rank 2728. Got it. You may proceed." The gate opened with a heavy groan, and the two stepped inside. As they walked in, Ro asked, "This might be a dumb question, but how many people are on the adventurer rankings?" Look answered, "Roughly 30,000. But only about 20,000 of them are actually active. Still, this ranking board is on a whole different level compared to others. People say the adventurer rankings are in a class of their own, especially in terms of sheer numbers." Ro raised an eyebrow. "A class of their own, even in numbers." "Exactly," Look explained. "For example, someone ranked in the 4 digits here would be equivalent to a 3-digit rank on other boards. That's why the quality of adventurers on this board is so high. A 3-digit adventurer here would easily outrank a 2-digit ranked person from another board. They're way above the guys you fought in the recent exam." Ro couldn't help but mutter, "The standard is insanely high." With a hopeful look, Look nodded and said, "All right then." She raised her voice, full of energy. "Let the adventure begin." They stepped into the forest. The Azaban forest, classified as a rank 48 danger zone, was wild and overgrown. The moment Ro entered, he sensed something off. Seeing his expression, Look asked, "What's wrong, Ro?" "This isn't just an ordinary forest," he replied. She chuckled, "So you noticed? They say a seasoned adventurer can tell how dangerous a place is just from a glance." Look elaborated, "But the average person would never be able to tell, which is why the danger zone ranking system exists." Azaban Forest was added to the rankings just 2 months ago, because of a large-scale monster outbreak. And right as she said it, a swarm of insects and beasts charged at them. Look screamed, "Ro, you better protect me properly." Ro drew his sword with a calm, steady hand. "Leave them to me." With a leap he charged into the swarm, his sword slicing cleanly through several monsters at once. A massive eagle dove from above, and Ro intercepted it with a sharp upward slash. He fought like a whirlwind, dispatching enemies left and right. Terrified by the display, the remaining insects fled into the trees. Look stared wide-eyed. "Was that one of Adol's techniques?" Ro nodded slowly. "Yeah. I learned a few techniques from him. But there are still many I haven't been able to use yet." Gripping his sword tightly, he added, "I think I'm getting close to mastering the second technique." Suddenly, a massive beast emerged, a Bradorc, a rank 126 monster. Its blazing eyes locked onto Ro as it let out a guttural roar. Sensing the danger, Ro muttered, "Guess it's time for a field test." He gathered his energy, and prana surged around him like a storm. Right in the middle of the path, a lotus bloomed in light. With blazing speed, Ro struck the monster twice in succession, but the Bradorc didn't even flinch. No wounds. No reaction. It was like nothing happened. Both Ro and Look were stunned. Then the monster retaliated. They turned and ran for their lives. "Didn't work," Ro shouted. "What the hell were you doing?" Look screamed. "I thought it'd work," he yelled back. "I didn't expect the enemy to be this tough." Still running, Look reminded him sharply, "You do remember your job is to keep me alive, right?" Just when they thought they were in the clear, Look suddenly stopped in her tracks. "Ro." "A cliff," she screamed. "Jump," he ordered. She gasped, "Wait," but before she could finish, Ro had already scooped her up and leapt off the edge. "Ah, Moom Dyad." Look wailed in terror. Ro, however, remained perfectly calm. They landed on the top of a giant tree. With the grace of someone who'd spent years in the wild, he hopped from branch to branch and landed safely on the forest floor. Look was dazed and dizzy, her insides feeling like they'd been scrambled. Ro gently set her down on the ground and let out a relieved sigh. The moment Look caught her breath, she yelled, "What do you mean, sigh? If you were going to do that, at least give me a heads up first." Ro replied nonchalantly, "Sorry. Most of Adul's training was like that, so I guess it's become a habit. She stared at him in disbelief. Seriously? Just what kind of training did you go through? Ro glanced around, something felt off. This place is, before he could finish, Look had already scanned their surroundings and excitedly exclaimed, "We're in luck. This is the target area for the survey." She went on to explain that ever since the Azabon forest was classified as a dangerous zone, its ecosystem had to be resurveyed from scratch. About 80% of the work was already done, but 20% remained. This area was part of that unfinished 20%. It also happened to be the epicenter of the recent large-scale monster outbreak. Sure enough, the region was teeming with a rich diversity of flora and fauna, some of the creatures appearing oddly shaped and unfamiliar. Seeing Ro frozen in place, Look called out, "Ro." He replied quietly, "I've never seen these plants or animals before." That's when it hit him, this was truly an adventure. The image of Yuna's radiant, excited smile flashed across his mind. "Ro, come with me, let's go on an adventure." The adventure Yuna had always dreamed of. The rustling of footsteps cutting through the grass snapped him out of his thoughts. Ro instinctively drew his sword, but Look quickly stopped him. "Wait." A white unicorn with a long sharp horn and shimmering fur emerged from the bushes. Its entire body was trembling, clearly weakened and fragile. Look gasped. "That's a rare type of magical beast." Look slowly approached the creature. Ro, puzzled, asked, "Shouldn't I finish it off?" She quickly opened her rankle and scanned the data, then replied firmly, "Absolutely not. This is a level 4 magical beast, a white unicorn. It's a rare species, nearly extinct." She knelt down beside the unicorn and removed the pouch slung over her shoulder. "It's injured. I'll take care of it." Ro looked surprised. "You know how to treat wounds?" Look answered while pulling out some supplies. "Rankers get hurt all the time, so I picked up some basic medical skills. I was the one who patched you up after Loud beat the crap out of you, remember?" She began dressing the unicorn's wound carefully. Then she turned to Ro and said, "Let's set up a temporary base here for today. As an appraiser, I can't just leave this little guy like this." Ro nodded. "All right." Suddenly, Look raised her voice, "Just so you know, protecting this unicorn counts as part of the ecosystem survey, okay? Don't get the wrong idea, I'm not prioritizing it over you or anything." Ro chuckled and waved her off. "It's fine. I get it." That night, under the canopy of trees, they built a campfire. Look lay asleep next to the white unicorn, while Ro stood a short distance away. Practicing his sword technique, he gathered prana and channeled it into his blade, then struck with a technique Chung, Lian Hoa. 2 sharp slashes struck a massive tree. The prana expenditure was substantial. The strikes landed cleanly, yet the resulting damage was disappointingly minimal. Ro wiped the sweat from his brow. "Useless," he muttered. The technique still eluded him. He lay back on the ground, placing his sword beside him, and stretching out both arms. His mind drifted back to Laud's illusionary swordplay, and the man's warning, "Don't underestimate the adventurer rankings." He thought of the Broward clan's combat art, spearmanship, meditation. "I'm completely powerless," Ro whispered. "With my current strength, I can't reach divine rank. I have to become even stronger." Suddenly he sat up straight. "Didn't Look say Laud mentioned I also had a martial art?" He stared at his own hand. "A martial art, huh?" The next morning Ro was sitting against a tree, trying to catch a bit of sleep, when he was jolted awake by Look's sudden shout. "Hua!" Ro snapped to attention. "What happened?" She looked panicked. "It just started thrashing out of nowhere." Ro looked over. The unicorn was no longer weak and listless like before, it actually looked much better. Look quickly analyzed the situation. White unicorns have amazing regenerative abilities. If treated properly, they recover quickly. Since this one is still young, it normally wouldn't be so wary of humans. She paused. Then frowned. "The way it's reacting, I'd bet that wound was caused by a human." Ro was taken aback. "By a human?" Look pointed at the wound on the unicorn's horn. "Look closely at these chipped edges, see how uneven they are. Looks like it was attacked by poachers." The horn of a white unicorn is a kind of miracle medicine. That's why they were hunted nearly to extinction in the past. Even though hunting them is banned now, demand still exists. They're still being poached and sold in the black market under the name Kirin. The beast suddenly let out a deep growl, snarling ferociously. Look was startled by its aggression and yelped in fear. The white unicorn charged straight at her. In a flash, Ro stepped forward, raising his sword just in time to block the sharp horn. Although the creature rammed with all its might, it couldn't push forward another inch. Locked in a standoff, Ro's cold, steady gaze bore into the unicorn's eyes, making it flinch. Startled, it turned and bolted back into the forest. Look shouted, wait no. Ro scratched his head and said sheepishly, guess I scared it. You're thinking of going after it? Yeah, Look replied urgently. Even though it's recovered a bit, it's definitely not back to full strength. And besides, there's never been any official report of a white unicorn appearing in the Azabon forest before. Tracking it is technically part of the ecosystem survey. As she spoke, she threw on an extra layer over her shirt. Hearing this, Ro quickly geared up as well, strapping on protective gear and grabbing his weapons. He looked off in the direction the unicorn had fled and said, I'll go on ahead. Be careful, Rao, Look warned. There might be poachers in these woods. He paused for a moment, then asked, what if I do run into a poacher? If I beat them, will my rank go up? Look answered, that depends on how strong they are. But it's possible. Ro dashed off like a streak of light. Got it. I'll take down as many as I can. He sprinted swiftly through the underbrush, chasing the unicorn. But it was too fast, he quickly lost sight of it. It went this way, he muttered. Suddenly, an arrow flew toward his face. Ro instinctively twisted his body, dodging to the side as the arrow buried itself deep in the ground just inches from his foot. Instantly, a man with a sword burst from the trees, shouting, Tough luck, poacher. We're in a bad mood today. The stranger swung his blade wildly, forcing Ro to dodge and immediately launch a counterattack. The man noticed the faint bluish glow of Ro's prana. It looked oddly familiar. Something clicked in his mind. Wait, stop, hold on, he yelled. Ro blinked in surprise. That voice from above, another voice called out. A boy perched in a tree joined the scene. Ro looked up and demanded, Who are you? Both newcomers shouted in unison, Eddie. And I'm Owl. A few days ago, the morning after the adventurer ranking exam, at the Traquista branch of the Appraisal Bureau, Owl approached the registration counter and announced, I'd like to take on a commission. The staff member asked, What rank of commission would you like to accept? He replied, Based on my adventurer rank. Just then, Eddie came rushing in, a bit out of breath. Hello, I'm here to take on a commission too. The two locked eyes in surprise. For a moment, they glared at each other, eyes sharp like daggers. Then, at the same time, they both muttered, Hey, you go first, Owl said. No, you go first, Eddie replied. With a sigh, Eddie spoke up. Did you look into the swordsman who beat us? Owl looked dejected. I did. But I couldn't find anything about him. It's hard to believe, but apparently he's never been on any ranking list at all. After a pause, Eddie added, I'm considered a prodigy on the archers leaderboard. But because of that bastard, my pride's been shattered. Getting crushed by a no-name with no official ranking. Hearing that, Owl's face darkened. He recalled the night after the exam, back at their base. Mandy had greeted him, Welcome back, Captain. How was the adventurer ranking exam? He responded blandly, I registered. Pick had cheered excitedly, That's our captain. Now we can expand our range of activities. Lala, the blonde, asked curiously, I bet the other participants had a rough time with you, huh? But Owl simply muttered. No, the others laughed. They must have been totally wrecked. Actually, wasn't the hardest part just holding back your strength? Mandy confidently said. There's no way a 3-digit ranked mercenary would lose to a rookie. At that, Owl suddenly slammed his fist onto the table with a loud crack, splitting it clean in half. The whole crew jumped, stunned silent. Captain. Grinding his teeth, Owl shouted, That guy didn't even look at me. Like I was nothing more than a stepping stone. He barked an order starting tomorrow. We're tripling the training load. The others gasped. Triple. Then Lala spoke up. Now that we're officially registered on the adventurer rankings, we can start taking commissions we weren't eligible for before. But Owl clenched his fist. That's still not enough. This world is far bigger than we imagined. I'm going to retrain myself from the ground up. It was a blow to his pride. Owl turned to Eddie and said, My pride was cracked just like yours. I didn't plan on focusing on the adventurer ranking board. But I can't keep going on like this. Eddie let out a deep sigh and said, My current adventurer rank is 6,725. Owl responded, I'm at 6,301. Then he added, Ro Tully, the one who defeated us, is ranked 2728. Eddie said confidently. The gap of about 4,000 ranks, that can be closed in the blink of an eye. Owl nodded. Looks like we share the same goal now. Let's take on a commission. They walked over to the reception counter. Eddie spoke first. There's a forest that was recently classified as a danger zone. Owl guessed. Azaban Forest, right? The more dangerous the area, the faster we can rank up. And just like that, the three of them ended up clashing inside the Azaban Forest. Ro locked eyes with his opponent, still unsure what move to make next, when suddenly the desperate cry of a white unicorn rang out in the distance. Immediately, he sheathed his sword and shouted, "We'll talk later," before dashing away. Eddie quickly followed him, asking, "A wounded white unicorn? I thought it was being hunted by poachers. Are you trying to protect that magical beast?" Ro replied, "Yeah," though in his mind he noted how fast Eddie was running. Eddie offered advice as they ran. When moving through a forest, it's best to use the uneven terrain to your advantage. Like this. He pushed off with his foot and burst forward, quickly overtaking Ro. Ro let out a grunt and picked up the pace. Suddenly, Eddie called back, "It's being attacked by a monster." In front of them loomed a massive beast. Long tentacles shot out of its tongue and wrapped tightly around the white unicorn. Ro started to approach, but a tentacle lashed out at him. With a swift slash, he cut it clean off. He studied the monster carefully. "I can't get close," he thought. "Then maybe I can finish it with one good strike." "No, I can't. The unicorn is too tightly bound. If I attack now, it'll get caught in the blow too." He turned to Eddie and asked, "Can you distract the monster somehow?" Eddie snapped, "How the hell am I supposed to do that?" Just then, a loud voice rang out. "Eddie, aim for its eyes." "Ro, keep moving." It was Owl. The two instantly obeyed. Ro charged forward, while Eddie loosed two arrows. Thwack, thwack. Both hit the monster's eyes, making it roar in agony. Owl gave the next command, "Ro, go for its legs." Ro veered to the side and unleashed a powerful slash at the creature's legs. It writhed and howled in pain, finally releasing the unicorn from its grip. All shouted, "Grab the unicorn and get out of here." Ro scooped up the injured creature and leapt aside. At the same time, Owl kicked down a massive tree, toppling it onto the monster to pin it in place. Ro couldn't help but be surprised by his speed and decisiveness. Eddie commented, "Not bad. Pretty solid leadership." Owl answered flatly, "I'm used to directing subordinates." Eddie scoffed, "Who the hell is your subordinate?" Ro stood still for a moment, remembering what the appraiser had once told him, "Top 10 in the adventurer rankings, your swordsmanship is excellent. But to reach the top 10 with only that..." Ro clenched his fists and thought, swordsmanship alone won't cut it. If I want to rise up the adventurer ranks, I need to learn more than just how to wield a sword. Look dashed over as fast as she could. Gasping for breath, she called out, "Ro, I'm sorry I'm late." But what greeted her eyes was a surprisingly calm scene. Perched on a large tree were the three others, casually sitting while the white unicorn beast stood nearby, eyeing them warily. Look blurted out, "Wait, what kind of bizarre situation is this?" Ro calmly recounted what had just happened. The girl exclaimed, "So you thought we were poachers?" Ro nodded. "It was a misunderstanding, but we cleared it up quickly." Look responded in a composed tone, "Even if it was resolved fast, you can't just suddenly attack people like that. I should file a report to the ranking board." At that, both Eddie and Owl jumped in alarm. She kept a straight face and said, "Just kidding. You two stopped yourselves in time. But next time I really will file a report." Owl broke into a cold sweat. "Got it," he muttered. Eddie added in a softer tone, "I'll be more careful." Owl leaned in and whispered, "Hey, why are you carrying around a special identification device?" Ro replied, "I heard it helps boost your ranking faster." He glanced at Look, who warned, "It might raise your rank, but it also puts you under constant surveillance. There's no job more rigid than that of an identifier. Just the travel back and forth between villages can take an entire day." Ro answered, "I don't think it'll come to that." Eddie disagreed. "No, you're just being used for convenience." He continued, "Do you know why identifiers are so desperate to become monopolists? Because that's the only way they can get promoted. Their promotions depend on their contribution to the ranking updates. In other words, someone like you who's climbing ranks at lightning speed, you're prime bait. That woman's just using you as a stepping stone to get promoted. Ro murmured. Promoted, huh? He recalled what Look said when they first met. There's something I have to do. He wondered, was that something a promotion? Somehow, it didn't seem to fit. Look climbed up the large tree and scanned the surroundings. The royal horn is still safe, she said. The small beast suddenly rubbed against her leg, and she turned to play with it. Watching them, Ro commented, seems like you two are friends now. Look replied, not really. This just seems like the only safe place around here. Owl scoffed, ungrateful little wolf. Eddie grumbled, it's not even cute. Look scolded, it's scared of you because you're acting like that. Owl defended himself, I didn't even do anything. The girl hugged the unicorn beast and jumped down from the tree. Then she added, Ro gives off a really scary vibe. He looked puzzled. What vibe? Look turned to the creature lying flat under the tree and said, hey, I've been wondering this whole time. This beast, yep, it's definitely a Neulam. Owl gasped, a magical beast we've never seen before. Look sat down to examine it more closely. They usually live in colder regions, so I guess it makes sense. Still, it's never been discovered in the Azabon forest before. She pulled out her ranktel to input the data. Ro, go ahead and log the sighting. He agreed, let's do it. After logging the entry, Look asked, we're here on an ecological survey commission. What about you two? Owl hesitated. We, more or less the same kind of job. Eddie gave a sheepish laugh. Yeah, we got commissioned by the Evaluation Bureau. Look stared at them closely. A commission in Azabon Forest that requires mercenaries and an archer. Suddenly, it clicked. I get it now. It's Ro's fault they're taking on adventurer-ranked commissions, isn't it? She stood up, pretending to pet the unicorn beast. Ro, you need to wake up too. She suddenly said. Oh right, Ro. I have some good news. Your sword speed ranking just got updated. She held up her ranktel for him to see. That Kensiru Ryu technique you used was insanely fast. I submitted a request, and it got approved. Look, Ro Tully, adventurer rank, 2728. Sword speed ranking, 26. Ro was genuinely shocked. From 58 to 26. Look beamed, all the ones above you are masters of high-speed sword draws. Pretty exciting, right? He replied softly. Yeah, I guess I am happy. But he looked at her puzzled. That move was almost impossible to see with the naked eye. How did you catch it? Look admitted honestly, just intuition. I am an identifier after all. I know at least that much. Seeing he was still deep in thought, she asked, what's wrong? Ro said quietly, could it be that you're actually pretty amazing? She lowered her head, then burst out laughing. You only just realized that now. Owl came over. Hey, which category got updated? Eddie added, yeah, I'm curious too. Look asked Ro, can we take a look? He nodded casually. Sure. Owl leaned over to check the screen, and his expression instantly hardened. This bastard's the one who beat the crap out of me. Eddie glanced at it too, but quickly lost interest. Too many numbers, he muttered. Suddenly, Ro spoke up. There's something I want to ask you too. Teach me how to fight with power that goes beyond swordsmanship. After talking for a while, Eddie exclaimed, so that's it. You've only ever trained in sword techniques. Ro admitted, that's right. He added, that move you just used was really helpful to me. When moving through the forest, it makes sense to take advantage of the uneven terrain. Eddie nodded. Still, I'm surprised you could copy my movements so quickly. Ro continued, and your guidance helped too, Owl. The man shrugged and replied bluntly, stuff like that's already second nature to me. Comes with the territory. After all, I am the leader of a mercenary group. I have to plan strategies to keep my team alive. In group battles, formation and timing are everything. Who goes where, who delivers the finishing blow, we calculate everything backward from there. Owl suddenly asked with a serious expression, are you really interested in this kind of thing? Your swordsmanship is already insanely strong. Do you really need our advice? Ro replied without hesitation, I do. So please teach me more. The two of them exchanged glances, then nodded, deciding to share their knowledge with him. Eddie began, when you're moving through a forest, you need to use all 5 senses. I'll teach you some tricks for working in sync. First up, front line and rear formation. Sitting nearby, Look silently listened to their conversation. Rose trying to change, she thought. Having him fight loud really was the right call. Her gaze drifted to the unicorn beast. Whinnies crept into her chest. Poachers showing up, Unidentified magical creatures. What's really going on here? The Azaban forest was hiding too many mysteries. A cold sweat ran down her back. This mission might be more than we can handle. Not far from there, Dalkin Iris was using a tracking spell to search for the white unicorn. When he spotted Ro's group near the creature, his eyes lit up in surprise. Rosso asked, "What is it?" Dalkin grinned. "While hunting down the runaway unicorn, I stumbled upon some kids." Rosso looked thrilled. "Kids, huh? That's great. Their organs are still fresh, we'll get a good price for those." Dalkin calculated quickly. "They're no unicorn, but since they're here, might as well take them too." He thought coldly. "If you step into a beast's territory, you'd better be ready to get torn apart." A wicked grin spread across his face, his eyes brimming with murderous intent. At that moment, Eddie was still rambling on passionately. Using all 5 senses is no easy task. Sight and hearing, those are obvious. But even smell, and taste too, they all need to be trained before they can be used effectively in battle. Ro responded, "I see. Then this forest really is an ideal training ground. The scent of plants and animals here is incredibly strong." Owl suddenly said, "I honestly can't tell any of them apart." Eddie explained, "A mercenary who's used to the smell of blood will have a harder time. But right now I can accurately sense how many creatures are around us." He added, "Use your prana. Think of prana as a liquid form of talent. Focus your awareness on the sense you want to sharpen, and you'll begin to feel it." Ro closed his eyes, concentrating deeply. His prana surged more and more powerfully until Eddie had to shout, "You need to control it." Owl was stunned. That much energy, it's insane. Ro thought to himself, every sense must become as sharp as a blade. He focused intensely, and suddenly he detected a strange presence on a high ledge, a demonic face staring right at them. Startled, Ro instantly drew his sword and took a defensive stance. Look was confused. "What is it, Ro?" He answered, "Someone's watching us. They're very close." Before he could finish the sentence, a thunderous punch came out of nowhere and sent him flying dozens of feet back. The group gasped in horror. Look screamed, "Ro, are you okay?" He staggered to his feet, covered in dirt. Then a man stepped forward, demanding loudly, "Who's letting their prana leak everywhere like this? Disgusting. Because of you, that thing came straight at me." Eddie and Owl immediately assumed defensive stances. "Who the hell are you?" Eddie shouted. Look suddenly recognized him and yelled, "Don't fight him. This guy is Dalkin Iris, ranked 672 among adventurers." Owl was shocked. "A 3-digit adventurer." Eddie's expression turned grim. "He's stronger than us." The man replied arrogantly, "So you've heard of me, huh?" Look raised her voice. "I'm well known too, you know. Right before I cracked the 2-digit ranks, I committed a crime and dropped terribly in ranking. Like an idiot." At that moment Rosso finally caught up, panting heavily and bending over breathless. "Dalkin, you're too fast." Dalkin corrected him, "You're just slow." When he spotted Look, Rosso exclaimed, "Oh? An appraiser too? Well, whoever you are, I don't care." Look suddenly shouted, Rosso cruel. He blinked, surprised. "Rank 76 on the smuggling list," she declared. Rosso stroked his curled beard and chuckled. "Not bad. You even know the criminal rankings." The criminal ranking system, an unofficial list, reflected the severity of an individual's crimes. The more infamous lists usually included serial killers and top-tier thieves. The higher the rank, the deeper the descent into depravity. Though not government-sanctioned, such rankings were created by individuals outside the Bureau's control. Some high-quality lists were even bought by the Bureau, as long as they weren't unethical. Once acquired, fans would continue updating them regularly. Dalkin's eyes shifted towards something beside them. The unicorn, there it is. He grinned wickedly. The white unicorn, hiding behind a small tree, seemed to sense the danger from this man. Look quickly stepped in front to block him. "Dalkin, why are you running with that man?" He answered casually, "Isn't it obvious? Money." She demanded, "So you teamed up with him just for money? With your skills you could have earned it honorably." Dalkin retorted, "Don't jump to conclusions. Money isn't my only goal. I'm working with him for 2 reasons, to sell goods to him, and to buy from him." Look was puzzled. "Buy?" Dalkin smirked. "You know what I'm talking about, appraiser. The rankings. If you want it badly enough, you can buy your way in." Realizing what he meant, Look clenched her fists in fury. How dare you insult the rankings in front of an appraiser? At that moment, Owl suddenly launched a sneak attack. Dalkin easily blocked him, scoffing, "What are these brats trying to pull?" Eddie raised his bow and declared, "We're tasked with patrolling Azaban Forest. We can't let a dangerous man like you roam free." Dalkin clicked his tongue. What a pain. Handle them like always. He unleashed a terrifying surge of prana that filled the entire area. Gripping Owl's sword blade with one hand, he crushed it into shards. Then he threw a devastating punch straight into Owl's chest. Die. Owl was gripped by terror. Am I really going to die here? But just then, a surge of pale blue prana stormed him like a hurricane. Who the hell are you supposed to be? Dalkin barked. That's my line, asshole. In the blink of an eye, a thunderous blast tore through the jungle, the shockwave shaking everything violently. Two forces collided, one green, one purple, and neither side gave an inch. Ro's face tightened. He gripped his sword and stared straight at his opponent. Across from him, the curly-haired man named Dalkin let out a strained laugh and prepared to strike. The assessor Look, standing beside Ro, shouted in alarm, "Lo, are you all right?" A murderous light flashed in Lo's eyes. He hesitated for a heartbeat before answering, "Yeah. But..." Dalkin smirked, "So you were a poacher, huh?" His lips curled, and his fingers twitched like someone excited. Look watched his movements in silence, thinking for a moment before saying, "I have been searching for him for a long time." Yes, there is no doubt. When she spoke that way, Ro raised his blade and pointed it at their opponent. This move was Island Gale, a single green slash aimed straight at Dalkin. Before Dalkin could dodge, a horrible explosion boomed. Faint chains that had bound him were suddenly shredded as he summoned strength to cut them free, then roared, "That kid's using prana." Ro frowned and fell silent, concluding, "Stubborn, my attack did not land." Immediately he remembered the time he would climbed a cliff with an older man who warned him, "Lo, be careful when you meet someone who can use prana. You are a special case. Normally, only those who reach mastery in a field awaken prana." As a boy, Ro had looked up at that cliff and asked, "A master?" The man's face had gone very serious. His voice hoarse as he explained, "Whether it is the sword, a weapon, anything you can awaken latent power through deep, wholehearted study. That is prana." Then, before Ro's eyes, the man had hauled himself up the sheer rock face. He planted his foot on the summit, slapped his hand down with a sharp sound. Ro looked up at him on that high peak, the sunset pouring out behind him. The man had raised his hand and said in a low voice, "They very well might be masters in a field." Ro's face had been full of doubt and confusion as he clutched his cold, sharp sword. Suddenly, Look at the edge of the clearing hurriedly warned him again, "Lo, watch out, Dalkin's ranked 12th in boxing." Ro glanced at her and muttered, "Rank 12. She scrolled on her phone and spoke in a low voice, listing off more stats. "He is ranked 4th in beast taming, 19th for raw arm strength, and 7th in weightlifting." As she finished, Look went pale. Then she raised her voice, "His strength is world-class, do not get near him." Without Ro noticing when he would moved, Dalkin had drawn close to her and sneered, annoyed, "Spilling other people's data like that, if someone were taking notes right now, that'd be a pain." He added with relish, "Looks like I will crush you first." He planted himself beside a tree trunk and, using his magic, wrenched the root out. At that moment Look's face filled with fear and panic. Dalkin hoisted the uprooted trunk and aimed it straight at her. His expression was one of cruel satisfaction as he taunted, "Die." He threw the tree at Look while she was still stunned. Ro charged forward and stopped the trunk with his body. His expression hardened. He clenched his teeth and threw all his strength to hurl the log high into the air. The force of the throw knocked Ro back a long distance. Look looked down at him, voice trembling, "Lo." He panted as he rose, his gaze ice cold and fixed ahead. Just then, someone watching them both murmured, puzzled, "Huh." The man stood beside curly-haired Dalkin Rosso, one of the smugglers. Stroking his beard, he grinned slyly and said, "Dalkin, seize him. He will fetch a high price." Dalkin's face brightened with greed. "If you say so, then it must be true. I will capture him just as planned. If he is still alive." Suddenly, from a high branch, a boy observed their movements. He notched an arrow and muttered, "Better not forget about us." Dalkin heard the high twang of bowstrings as arrows began to fly in rapid succession. He turned his face and sneered, glancing over as he used the strength in his arm now fully suffused with prana to stop the incoming arrows. His expression brimmed with exhilaration as he stared at the boy and asked, irritated, "Are you worth remembering?" Under that cold gaze Eddie shivered and froze where he stood. Suddenly another man appeared. He hurriedly tossed a bomb at the two of them, and Dalkin glanced back, puzzled. This man was the leader of the Scarlet Hounds, called Owl. His face remained unnervingly composed. "Push him back now," he urged. Through the drifting black smoke, Dalkin shouted angrily, "Do not toy with me, I will wipe you out." He slammed a heavy palm toward Owl, cracking the surroundings. Rosso, nearby, flinched and stepped back. The explosions rolled out, and flocks of birds took frantic flight. When the smoke cleared, Dalkin frowned in confusion, looking around at the wreckage and growled, "They got away." Rosso brushed off his coat as he walked and warned, "Dalkin, that was too dangerous." Dalkin taunted, "What if you would died," with a mocking tone. In an instant, people from the heroes group scattered and fled. Owl carried Look on his back and shot Eddie an approving glance. "Impressive, you understood my meaning," he said. The boy, running, answered, "You can't beat him with brute force. I think the best move is to get everyone out." Rose stayed close to the front of the retreat, holding the white Qilin and running without reply. He brooded over Look's words. That man was ranked 672 on the adventurer list. How could someone that strong be down at 600? Ro hugged the Qilin to his chest and took a steadying breath. Suddenly the Qilin stamped the ground and let out a low growl. King. Ro stopped and faced it, apologizing quietly, but the creature issued another warning snarl. They halted well away from the forest. Owl gently set Look down on his back and said, "We have made it this far. We should be safe now." Look fixed Ro with a serious look and warned, "Lo, there is still one more thing to do." Rosso, cruel, relentless, added, "You must capture him." Ro's face filled with doubt and confusion as he repeated the words, "Russo cruel." That bearded fellow, the two of them imagined the blonde-haired name. Look nodded, the one with the beard. Innocently, he looked at her and asked, "Why do we have to capture him?" After a moment, the girl fumbled and did not answer. Look lowered her eyes and said sadly, "Because of my own objective." Seeing her like that, Ro fell silent. At that moment, Owl cut through his thoughts with a cool, clipped voice. "I do not know what she means, but should not we decide what to do next?" Look glanced at him, flustered, and admitted, "You are right." She adjusted her hat and, in a softer voice, apologized, "Sorry, Lo, I was too hasty." Rao continued to watch her but did not reply. Immediately Owl banished the awkward atmosphere and gave his opinion. "As I said before, our mission is to patrol the Azavan forest." Eddie looked up at him and replied, "I have reported this already." Owl continued, "If we are going to keep tracking those two." Look's expression returned to normal and she reminded them gently, "As an official agent, I will be blunt, the two of you do not stand a chance against them." Owl folded his arms and hesitated, "I know. That is why we will only observe." The two of them kept talking. "Once we expose their crimes we will report to the Bureau and let them handle the rest." "Still, it is dangerous. That is exactly why we are doing this," Eddie said. "I am ranked 6,000 among adventurers," he added, making Eddie jump and stare at Owl in irritation. Owl calmly shifted to strategy. "What if we actually pull this off?" Seeing that he was not heeding her warning, Look touched her hat and sighed, "You are admirable. Truly." A moment later she spoke seriously, "With stealth and tracking scores high enough, plus the fact this forest ranks 48th on the danger list, depending on how reliable the intel is, you could climb at least 1,000 ranks." Owl smiled thinly, pleased. Eddie, beside him, burst out excitedly, "Now I have got motivation." Look put her hands on her hips and warned the two of them sternly, "Just do not do anything reckless." They nodded in agreement. "All right, like I said, we won't engage. I do not intend to be reckless." "What about you two?" she asked, glancing at Ro. He fell silent for a moment, then told them, "We want to take the royal horn somewhere safe." They both looked down at the white Qilin and replied casually, "Good plan. It is hard to fight with the royal horn nearby. Dalkin's targeting that kid. Keeping it close only raises the risk of ambush." Rose stepped forward slowly, ran a hand through his hair, and shook his head. No, it is not that. I just do not want the royal horn dragged into this. He reached out to touch the Qilin's mane. Look sat down beside it, smoothing its fur with a smile. It must be terrified because of us. With the plan settled, Owl spoke coolly, then we split up for now. Once the royal horn is safe, meet under that tall tree. Nana or Eddie will be there each night. Ro looked at him, puzzled. For what? Owl answered calmly, just in case. Do not know when we will need one another. Immediately Eddie offered help eagerly. Lo, before we split, let me show you how to move through this forest. Ro gave a helpless shrug and said, thanks. A little later, Owl urged the boy, hey, if we hesitate, Dalkin might slip away. Up ahead, the boy waved his hand, signaling, go on ahead. No matter where you are, I will find you. After that, Eddie spoke calmly, listen carefully. While Owl merely frowned in annoyance at the boy. In the triangular formation, the three of them conversed casually. Can you teach me more about your tactics? Ro asked. I thought you were in a hurry. Quiet, the boy replied, just a little longer, then I will go. Time was pressing, and the two of them guided Ro efficiently. He looked at them and said, there is a lot to learn. Owl did not hesitate to make a request. I wonder if this counts as tuition, but can I borrow that dagger? My sword is broken. Ro quickly pulled the dagger from his pocket and handed it over. Sure, he said, as long as you do not mind using it for hunting. Before sleep, they said their farewells one last time. Practice visualizing a bit, it will greatly improve your success rate. Do it once a day, remember. Ro nodded, thanks, both of you. By then, Look had become close to the white Qilin. She looked at Ro and smiled softly, then let us get the royal horn somewhere safe. Finally, they could resume the ecological survey they had been assigned. Dalkin remained a concern, but it was their responsibility to complete the mission. You understand what I mean, right, Lo? Ro looked at her emotionlessly and nodded. Seeing his calm face, Look repeated seriously, are you sure? Ro gave a non-committal, Ro then spoke gravely, I trust Owl and Eddie. If it is them, they will get it done. Honestly, they might even be better than me. Look, hearing this, agreed, their skills are truly impressive. As you said, we can trust them. Suddenly, she raised a finger and proposed, I have an idea. Why do not we try to find the royal horn's home during the survey? I have wondered where it came from. There might be more of its kind out there. If the place seems safe, we could even let it stay. Ro looked down at Look thoughtfully and asked, but how do we find it? She touched the Qilin's mane excitedly, we just ask it. Hey, little one, where do you want to go? A moment later, it seemed to sense something. With a low growl, it darted in a direction. Look noticed and said, that looks like the way. The two followed the Qilin closely, whispering, really, let us trust its instinct, it knows its way home. Look's eyes were filled with confidence. It was scared before, she said firmly, if it were just a kid, of course it would want to go home. Ro gazed ahead, hesitating, sounds reasonable. Suddenly, Look pointed to a creature perched in a tree and shouted excitedly. Another unidentified animal, Lo, take note. Ro quickly retrieved his notebook and replied, got it. He sketched the monkey's face and thought to himself, like this, right. Then Look pointed at a deer. Lo, another one. He looked up and replied nonchalantly. She grumbled, you do not have to respond to every single one. There is one over there, he said calmly. Night fell, and everyone rested together in one spot. The white Qilin lay by the fire, warming itself against the chill of the forest. The fire crackled loudly as Ro walked away to enjoy some solitude. He inhaled deeply, loosening his entire body. Then he released prana, and power surged outward. Suddenly, Look approached and called softly, Lo. Ro glanced at her and replied, Luke. She tossed her hair over her shoulders and asked in surprise, am I disturbing you? He answered faintly. No, I am just reviewing what Eddie taught me. So she was still awake. A moment later, Look handed him a notebook and smiled. I just looked over your report. You wrote poorly, you need to improve that, but for now I will let it slide. Try to write more concisely. I am just giving you objective feedback. While Look was still examining Ro's sketch, she heard him call, Luke. He spoke of wanting to capture Russo for his own objective, which startled Look. His expression remained calm as he asked seriously, Is that objective the thing you said you absolutely had to do? The girl fidgeted with her fingers, uneasy, and murmured softly. Ro glanced at Luke and firmly said, I will help you. She looked at him with doubt, huh? As he walked, he reminded her, staying up this late. It feels like if you sit still, everything you have been holding in will explode. Right, I understand that feeling very well. Luke's eyes widened in surprise. She restrained her irritation and said, you really understand, you make it sound like it is nothing. Suddenly, she seemed to realize something and fell silent. A moment later, she ran up to Ro and asked suspiciously, is that why you train late every night? He replied coldly, yeah. Hearing his confirmation, Luke's face became tinged with self-reproach. She pressed her lips together. Then, in a quiet voice, she said, thank you. But you do not even know what my objective is, Lo. Ro simply glanced at her and said, even if I do not know, I can still help. Suddenly, Luke interrupted him. I will tell you. Her eyes were resolute as she spoke loudly. I will tell you what my true objective is. The ranking list, the list of the best, from top to bottom. Everyone fights to climb higher. Being ranked brings honor and proves their worth. But what if the opposite exists? What if, in this world, there is a ranking that records those climbing from the very bottom, the worst ranking list? Luke's expression darkened with anger. She gritted her teeth and said, that is it, the dark side of the ranking that I am chasing. Luke was little. 5 years ago, Luke had a very close friend. Her friend was a blind child with blonde hair, a girl named Miriella. She was the only one who wholeheartedly supported Luke. Born blind, she had never seen the world, and so she never poked fun at Luke's dreams. Sitting on a bench, Miriella admired him and breathed, Luke, you are amazing. Do you really want to become an assessor? She excitedly shared her own dream. My dream is to become an assessor and break the rankings. There is no greater honor than to record great people with my own hand to mark those who will make history. After she spoke, Luke leaned back on the bench and complained bitterly, but the others say I will never make it. You are the only one who believes in me, Miriella. Miriella agreed warmly. Maybe this school is too small for someone like you, Luke. Then she changed the subject. Hey, yesterday my family got invited on a cruise. Miriella hesitated, then tried to explain, I think it is called Bond something. Before she could finish, Luke sprang to her feet and shouted, Bond Solutions. Instantly she leaned in close, curiosity bright in her voice. Miriella fumbled, yeah, the luxury liner that just launched nearby. My dad accepted an invitation, so I do not know much. Then Miriella grew a little urgent and asked, so, if you do not mind, would you like my ticket, Luke? Miriella was stunned when Luke blurted out, what? Miriella replied matter-of-factly, I do not really get to see anything anyway. Hearing that, Luke's cheeks puffed in anger. She jumped up and cried, no. Turning to Miriella with determination, she said, if I go, I want to go with you. Miriella hesitated, but before she could finish, Luke grabbed her hand. She swore earnestly, I will hold your hand the whole trip. Touched, Miriella laughed and said, thank you, I will ask my father. Luke followed her home with a bright smile. Miriella did ask, and her mother gave up her ticket. Luke was able to board the Bond Solutions liner. The two of them held hands through the voyage. For Luke, who had always felt out of place at school because his dreams were so big, Miriella was his only friend. They exchanged sincere affection. Miriella and her family were grateful to Luke. But the voyage turned catastrophic. 2 days later, a disaster struck, an engine failure left the ship stranded, and it began sinking rapidly. In the control room, a crewman, panic in his voice, reported that more than half the lifeboats were damaged in the collision. If they were to evacuate everyone using the remaining boats, they would need to make 3 trips. The captain, composed, ordered all passengers to the deck. He pulled his hat down and announced gravely, I will decide who boards the lifeboats. The crewman steadied himself and replied, understood, sir. The captain laid his hand on a book and muttered sadly, there is no choice but to use it. A short while later, everyone was gathered on deck. The captain's voice rang out, we will now announce the passenger list for the first lifeboat. If your name is called, please board immediately. Luke tried to stay calm and comfort Miriella, it will be fine, Miriella, I am here with you. The captain began reading names, Jack Brown. Lair Ames. A few seconds later, he called Miriella's name, Luke Emidia. Luke's face lit up with relief, and the captain continued, Lucas Nixon. Oliver Crow. Then the captain stopped and declared, that is the full list for the first lifeboat. Luke could not believe it and whispered in panic, what, only me? Miriella grew quiet, as if making a grave decision, and then she suddenly let go of Luke's hand. Realizing what was happening, Luke cried out, Miriella, but Miriella replied firmly, I am fine, go on ahead. Luke hesitated, but Miriella cut her off and explained seriously, there is not time to argue. If we do not cooperate, no one will survive. She smiled sincerely and said, I believe you will become an assessor, Luke, so I hope you will believe in me the same way. Luke forced back tears and answered, all right. What happened next was that she was pulled to shore by a rescue boat. The lifeboat reached land and immediately turned back toward the ship. But after several trips, Luke still could not find Miriella's face among the survivors. When she looked out, all she could see was the ship engulfed in flames, and by the time the third rescue run came, it was already too late. Luke collapsed to the deck and muttered, no. No way. At that moment she overheard two crewmen talking nearby. Lucky we did not go up there, we survived because of that. They chatted casually in front of the roaring fire, talking about how the lowest ranked people get pushed aside. Luke crept closer and, disbelieving, demanded, what do you mean by that? She clenched her fists and, trying to hold back her anger, pressed them for an answer. What do you mean by the worst ranks? The two men panicked at once. Kid, did you hear that? She tightened her grip and, voice trembling with fury, shot back. Listen to how you reacted. This is not something everyone should know, is it? Then Luke fixed them with an icy stare and threatened. Explain. If you do not, I will make sure this worst-ranking rumor spreads across this entire coast. One crewman relented and said, okay, I will tell you, but do not tell the captain. As he spoke, hatred slowly filled her eyes. Back by the fire, Luke calmly explained what the worst ranking was. She spoke sadly, it is a list that ranks people from the weakest upward socially, economically, physically, mentally, cataloging those who are deficient in every aspect. She buried her face in her knees and continued, so you can tell at a glance who they are, understand? Tully listened in silence and then said gravely, it is used to decide who gets discarded when things go wrong. She only nodded somberly. Luke went on, voice heavy with bitterness. Those who hold other people's lives in their hands use it. The captains of luxury liners, hospital directors, politicians, they use the list to decide whose life to prioritize. Then her tone hardened with resolve. My goal is to erase that worst ranking from this world. Under the starry sky her voice rang with determination. I will never forgive the system that killed Miriella. A ranking that pushes people into despair has no place in this world. Tully sat quietly and listened. Suddenly he asked, I understand what the worst ranking is now, but how does that connect to Russo? Luke calmly outlined her plan. Simply put, she wanted to use one criminal to take down another. She explained seriously, the worst ranking is an unofficial chart like Russo being listed among unregistered criminals. If we capture Russo and use him to force answers about those unofficial rankings, we can get closer to whoever's behind the worst ranking list. Her tone was solemn as she added, that is why I want to take down that man, Dalkin, at any cost. Tully asked skeptically, is there any clue about the mastermind? She answered evenly, no clues at all. But given that they have pulled in politicians and the wealthy, it has to be a big organization. Her face grew grave as she analyzed aloud, there might even be a secret branch of the institute. That is only my speculation. After that both fell silent. Then Tully spoke up encouragingly, you must have had a hard time. He looked at her with gravity and admitted honestly, it must have hurt, yet you never stopped. You are incredible, Luke. Luke froze, stunned. After a few seconds she almost whimpered, do not. She buried her face in her knees again and said, voice thick, if you say things like that now, I will cry. Honestly fell silent. Then he smiled gently. Suddenly Luke made a demand, then you have to tell me yours, Lo. She looked up and, half playful, said, it is not fair if I am the only one who cries, tell me your goal. Tully did not hesitate. He agreed, all right. Then, teasing casually, he added, but I won't cry. Luke immediately shot back, no way, I will make you cry right here in my arms. The next day, the quiet forest was suddenly pierced by the sound of heart-wrenching sobs. Look was crying, her grief evident and profound. Tully reluctantly asked, still crying. She choked back words between sobs, it is just. I have never gone through something as hard as Lo has. Even if I cried all night, the tears would not stop. Eventually, Look's sobs subsided. Wiping her tears, she spoke, now I understand why Lo was so impatient. He wanted to reach the island quickly to make sure everyone was safe. She adjusted her sword neatly and added, but I realized that even impatience could not get us there any faster. Tully glanced at her and earnestly confessed, you taught me that, Luke. He spoke seriously, if I fall short in the future, please tell me. Luke froze for a moment, startled. You mean? She began. Did not answer verbally but nodded firmly. Then he extended his hand and said solemnly, please become my exclusive assessor officially this time. Luke wiped the corner of her eyes and quietly agreed. She tied up her hair and put on her hat. Then, reaching out with a radiant expression, she replied, I will never regret it. Hearing that, Rose smiled gently. They clasped hands firmly. On the forest trail, Luke walked while keeping an eye on their surroundings. We have come quite far, she noted, then looked back at Tully and added, I hope it can find its way home safely. Curious, he asked, by the way, where do royal horn creatures usually live? She answered smoothly, mostly in caves. Luke explained in a composed tone, they are very resilient, so they rarely need to hunt. That is why they usually live quietly inside the caves. At that moment, the unicorn suddenly growled. It bolted forward immediately. Luke rushed after it while calling out, it must be nearby, Lo, do not lose it. Tully responded firmly, understood. The unicorn ran a long stretch through the forest. As they followed, they noticed something ahead. A massive stone stood directly in front of them. Luke frowned, this is. She inspected it briefly, puzzled. A huge rock, then she paused, as if recalling something, and shook her head. Swiftly, she dashed forward. Seeing it clearly, she gasped in shock, Muse mimic. No way, a rare beast like this. Existing here, she lifted a hand to feel its body and murmured thoughtfully, but it is already dead. I see. That explains all the mysteries. Hearing this, Tully asked, curious, what do you mean? Luke stood and explained, do you know about mimics? They are magical beasts that use treasure to lure humans and then devour them. She continued, pointing out the abilities of the mimic before them. Muse mimics use other magical beasts instead of treasure. They swallow rare beasts inside their bodies to lure poachers, living in symbiosis with the beasts they carry, and together they devour the intruders. Luke carefully examined the creature's body while explaining further. They are also called mobile museums. They roam everywhere, collecting all sorts of magical beasts. Tully, finally understanding, asked, could the royal horn be inside this one? She confirmed with a nod. Then, in a serious tone, she analyzed, when a muse mimic hunts, it releases all the beasts it stores at once to attack poachers. But it seems this one was counterattacked this time. Immediately, Rose's mind connected the dots, and he muttered, Dalkin. Luke took notes while making deductions, then our ecological survey is complete. The mass outbreak of magical beasts in the Azaban forest was caused by the muse mimic's death. All the beasts it had been holding escaped at once and threw the ecosystem into chaos. That is enough evidence for our report. Suddenly Tully spoke with grave shock. That is terrible. He eyed the wounds on the muse mimic and asked, even those injuries were caused by poachers? Luke glanced over the damage and shook her head. No, those marks likely appeared after it died, from other beasts feeding on it. She examined the wounds carefully and reasoned seriously. Muse mimics form very tight bonds with the symbiotic beasts they carry. Whoever did this is probably a beast that naturally lives in this forest. Nearby, the white Qilin watched the carcass mournfully. Tully stepped closer, patted its flank as if to comfort it, and said quietly, you have lost your home too. He added in a calm voice, I know how that feels, like your heart's been torn apart. The Qilin stood there and listened. Luke was affected by his words and called his name softly, Lo. Suddenly the ground trembled, shattering the somber air. A gigantic red beast was approaching from behind them. Luke's expression hardened and she shouted, that is the one we saw before. A Brad orc burst onto the scene, roaring as it swung a massive strike. It slammed down toward the two of them, but Road Tully reacted swiftly, grabbing them and dodging aside. He planted himself between Look and the danger like a guardian. After that attack, the Brad Orc paused, then turned and seized the Muse Mimic's corpse. In the next instant it greedily tore into the dead beast's flesh. Seeing this, Look cried out in horror, "It is eating it." Without warning, the white Qilin bolted forward. It leapt at the Brad Orc to attack. Look cried out, "No," but the red beast swatted the Qilin aside with a single blow, sending it skidding along the ground until it finally came to a stop. Still, the Qilin struggled to its feet again. Trembling but defiant, it fixed its wary gaze on the enemy and crouched into an attacking stance, ready to fight on. Road Tully suddenly stepped forward and drew his sword. "Wait right there," he ordered, pointing his blade at the Brad Orc. "I will take it down." At that moment a thought rang in his head. "You said there is a move you want to use but you keep failing with it. Right?" A memory flashed back to a conversation with Eddie Marmon. Eddie, hearing Ro's problem, had been pensive. "I do not know much about swordplay either. You use prana, right?" Ro had replied bluntly, "I think I fail because I can't control my prana." Eddie had brightened at that and declared confidently, "Then it is simple. I will teach you the prana control method passed down in the marksman family. You should pick it up quickly." Back in the present, Road Tully closed his eyes and concentrated on the technique. A heartbeat later he snapped his eyes open. With a hazy focus, Road Tully spoke aloud, "The prana control method." Eddie Marmon, hands on his hips, let out a sigh. "You roughly understand how to enhance your 5 senses, right? The next step is to use those senses to look inward." Road tilted his head slightly, peering into himself. He gestured with both hands, illustrating as if viewing himself from above, surveying his own body from his own head. His eyes gleamed with a hidden insight. "Try it, and you will notice something interesting," he said. Through Eddie Marmon's guidance, Ro's perception seemed unusually sharp, especially for someone like him, whose entire body pulsed with prana. The effect was strikingly pronounced. Returning to the present, he relaxed and closed his eyes, diving inward with his heightened senses. Before him stood the colossal Brad Orc, a mountain of a beast. Gradually, something began to take shape around him, emanating from his very being. Though his eyes were shut, he could perceive the source of his own power more clearly than ever. This was himself. Every movement felt like the pulse of his body, the chaotic flow of prana. The familiarity made it easy to acclimate. "I understand now. If it is like this." He opened his eyes, his pupils blazing, his vision locked onto the target. The Brad Orc, sensing the threat, turned to face him, but it was too late. The tip of his sword, fully charged, pointed directly at it. Cornered, it closed its eyes and lunged in a desperate strike. Ro gripped his sword tightly, whispering, "Middle path." The blade sliced through the air like a cold, decisive invocation of his new technique, transformation in harmony. The power behind the strike was undeniable. Look had been observing closely and her eyes shone with awe. The second strike. It worked, but Ro shook his head. No, one strike is not enough. He continued to swing again and again, each motion faster and more ethereal than the last. His gaze hardened as he explained in a measured tone, "Transformation in harmony is a technique that accumulates strike after strike, without end." Amidst the flurry of blows, the Brad Orc could do nothing but roar in despair. With a sharp clack, Road Tully sheathed his sword. The moment he turned, a massive explosion erupted, throwing dust and debris into the air. Look's eyes widened in amazement. After the chaos settled, Ro approached the white Qilin, soothing it gently. "Do not be afraid. I am not your enemy." The Qilin cautiously approached, sniffing his hand a few times. Look watched, moved, as it placed its hoof on Road Tully's hand. She thought silently, "At this point, it is best to travel with the royal horn. This forest has become far too dangerous." Looking up at the clear sky, Look wondered briefly if Owl was safe. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the forest, Dalkin was mercilessly torturing a wild white Qilin, which screamed pitifully. He wielded sharp weapons, glaring at the trembling beast. "Stand still, I can't strike accurately if you keep moving." Losing patience, he turned to Rosso Cruel. "A little damage won't hurt, right?" The smuggler immediately objected. "No, that will lower the price." Dalkin slammed his weapon down in frustration. Why, I will crush it to dust anyway. Rosso tapped his staff, explaining, if it is dust from the start, they will suspect it is fake. Hidden high in the trees, Eddie Marmon and Owl Darkus had been observing all along. Owl muttered in disgust, damn it. I feel nauseous just watching. Eddie nodded grimly. The brown-haired boy tried to stay calm, but this was no opponent they could defeat. Owl looked at him and said, we have no choice but to report to the assessment bureau. On the ground, Rosso was counting cages. It seemed they had gathered nearly all the loot. Suddenly, Dalkin muttered without preamble, then now is the time. He formed a circle with his thumb and forefinger, placing it over his wide-open eyes, ready to deal with the intruders watching him. High in the tree, the two observers felt immense pressure. It was too late. With a swish, Dalkin dropped to the base of the tree where they were hiding. He landed a punch that shattered the ancient trunk, forcing them to leap away to avoid the blow. Owl and Eddie skidded several meters before finally stabilizing. The kid stared at the hulking man before him. We were hiding our presence. When did you notice? He demanded. The reply was blunt, from the start, kids. Then Dalkin calmly pointed out their weakness. You hunted the beasts up in the trees. We are the ones gathering the goods. All the beasts around here were under our control. Eddie swore under his breath, this bastard, yet a flicker of worry ran through him. A 3-digit ranked adventurer is not just muscles. Owl sprang into action, flinging a weapon forward. To everyone's shock, Dalkin nonchalantly caught it. He seemed to know the object was not a real blade but a sack of sand. Next came an arrow. Was that trick used twice? It turned out to be a smokescreen tossed to buy a chance to flee. Standing amid the choking dust, Dalkin roared, I will kill you. Owl spun and shouted, run. Eddie did not hesitate either. We are running. Even while sprinting at full tilt, Owl understood that the same cheap trick that worked before would not save them now. What do we do? He thought. An idea sparked in the boy's head. Eddie plucked a leaf from a branch while Owl watched, puzzled. We can only try to raise our survival odds even a little, he muttered. Gritting his teeth until his fingertip bled, he smeared blood across the leaf. He then wrapped the bloodied leaf around an arrow. With a whoosh, the arrow streaked away on its flight. Both of them followed its path with their eyes. Eddie exhaled, I did everything I could. They felt Dalkin close in. He exuded raw killing intent. What, you still have not run? He jeered. Smart thinking. I know every contour of this terrain. I will kill you in one strike. Owl shot back, do not block my way. Eddie smirked, that line should be mine. As he drew an arrow from his quiver, he whispered, an archer only shows his true skill when there is cover. It is wrong to expect this to be like a test. Beside him, Owl slowly unsheathed his keen blade, adding dryly, coincidentally, I am different from when I competed. Team fighting is my specialty. It is easier to show skill with allies at your side. Blue prana began to rise around Eddie. Red prana flared around Owl. Good, they said in unison. They took their stances, ready to face whatever came. Let us go. Ro turned his gaze away, his eyes lifting to the sky. I feel a strange surge of energy. Is it just an illusion? He wondered. Look stepped forward, calling out, low, about what we should do with the royal horn from now on. The white Kirin closed its eyes, attentively listening to her suggestion. At this point, I think the best course is to protect this child. Take it to the assessment bureau. This is not the first time I have defended a magical beast. Let me handle it. Rose studied her for a moment, then slowly analyzed the situation. That guy won't sit still. If we want to leave the forest with the royal horn, we have no choice but to defeat Dalkin. Look nodded firmly. I think so too. She held up 2 fingers. I have exactly 2 options in mind. She crossed her arms and elaborated. First, wait for Owl to report to the assessment bureau and have the institute forces arrive. But the opponent is Dalkin. If someone like Mr. Loud is waiting there, they will rush in immediately. Otherwise, it will take time to gather them all. Rose's voice deepened. Dalkin's control over key energy surpasses mine. I am not confident I can keep evading his perception indefinitely. Look's eyelids flickered. Frowning, she suggested, the other option is very simple. Ro listened intently as energy began to ripple throughout the forest. Figures thundered forward. Dalkin thrust his massive hand out, astonished. What? Eddie and Owl activated their own ki, alert to his next words. You can use ki too, Dalkin asked, surprised. The energy radiating from the two was immense and stable. Not just potential, it was capability. Ro thought back, humans awaken ki by mastering a specific field, but without a trigger, it cannot be awakened. Owl had faced life and death situations, honing his combat intuition over years as a mercenary. He was adept at gauging enemy strength and had faced no real difficulty in recent years. Eddie, a genius archer born of a prestigious bloodline, commanded respect from all. No one dared challenge him. Together, they were like a living monument of success, yet neither had ever truly known failure. Until recently, that is, when they encountered an anomaly capable of wielding ki, Lo Tuli. Owl raised his sword, ready for battle. That alone was enough. Eddie drew an arrow to the string, prepared to awaken his energy. Owl surged forward at Dalkin, unstoppable. He dodged Owl's sword with razor precision. Dalkin's eyes gleamed with a sharp light as he swung a heavy fist toward his opponent. Owl slashed horizontally to intercept, and the collision between fist and blade sparked violently in midair. Owl's eyes flared as well. He had seen something. I see it now. This is the power of chi energy. Meanwhile, Eddie stood at a distance, bow raised, carefully watching their every move. He narrowed his eyes. I actually managed to use it once before, back in the forest, but this is the first time I can see its color. His pupils lit up with an electric blue glow. Now I can shoot with even greater precision, he thought. He released his arrow, activating his skill. Homing shot. Just as Dalkin dodged Owl's strike, he found himself in Eddie's line of fire. The arrow flew straight toward the back of his neck. His eyes locked on the incoming projectile, and he cursed. Damn it! He aimed right where I dodge, channeling every ounce of chi energy within him. His entire body began to glow. The arrow clattered harmlessly to the ground. A small pouch spun through the air. Dalkin looked up just as it burst with a boom, a smoke bomb. Thick gray mist filled the area, forcing him to wince. He looked down again, startled, as another arrow shot toward him. His feet slid backward across the dirt as he traced the arrow's trajectory, then spotted Eddie perched on a nearby tree branch, staring down at him with fierce determination. Dalkin quickly calculated the situation. He can target anywhere I move. He climbed that tree at the same time he tricked me with that feint. Owl seized the opening, slashing again, but Dalkin backstepped narrowly out of range. He realized he was cornered. A coordinated team, archer sharing my position, swordsmen pressing me without pause, their timing is flawless. He glanced at Owl's cold, composed face. So that one's the brains, he muttered internally. Owl's fingers subtly shifted into a series of hand signs. Dalkin caught it immediately and smirked. Hand signals too, huh? If I had a little more time, I could crack their code. These bastards really are good at deception. Then he went silent. Suddenly, Dalkin reached up to rub the back of his neck. I give up, he said flatly. Dealing in monster trading brings too many headaches. Fighting new people is just a waste of energy. So I've only been toying around. His hand flared with a razor-sharp aura. Understand? The veins on his arm bulged, his chi radiating like blades. This isn't a difference that can be solved with brains alone, he seemed to convey. Don't underestimate us, Owl roared, charging forward. From above, Eddie released his bowstring. Dalkin tightened his stance, fists raised. Sword and arrow attacked in perfect sync, but Dalkin's chi burst outward, enveloping both weapons in its glow. He punched. Grip speed, rank 48. Owl jerked backward with a choked gasp. KH. Dalkin caught the tip of Owl's sword with his bare hand and lifted it effortlessly. Owl's eyes widened in disbelief as the man crushed the blade between his fingers. Grip strength, rank 19. He followed up with a vicious kick. Owl's body flew back and hit the ground hard, blood spraying from his lips. Owl, Eddie cried, horror in his voice. Dalkin turned, uprooting the very tree Eddie stood on. Weightlifting, rank 7. A system note flashed. Owl whispered faintly, Eddie? Dalkin rubbed his neck again, chuckling darkly, still clinging to life. Huh? Too bad, your organs are pulp. So I can't even sell you anymore. Raising his arm high, he bellowed, in that case, just die already. A streak of green light suddenly lashed across his arm, binding it tight. His eyes widened. Ro stepped forward, his tone cheerful. "Thanks for the message on the arrow. Good thing I wasn't late." Owl whispered weakly to Eddie. As Dalkin scowled, "You again," he hissed. Ro's expression turned solemn. The simplest method, final resolution. He leveled his sword toward Dalkin. "Stance firm. I will be the one to defeat you." In that moment, their figures stood side by side. Ro Tully, Adventurer rank 2.728. Dalkin Iris, Adventurer rank 672. Rosso Cruel stared at the cages for a long moment, then said, "Dalkin's late." He adjusted his spectacles and stared intently at the thing in his hands, wondering if the man was really struggling against a pair of kids. Rosso mulled over the young man he would see. If a wildcard exists, it would be that brat. That prana of his. Indeed. Then, without warning, a mysterious smile spread across Rosso's face. Meanwhile, Ro faced Dalkin. The two exchanged razor-sharp looks. The air around them crackled, each man's presence pressing to overwhelm the other. Dalkin struck like lightning, hurling a fist at Ro that caught him off guard. A barrage of blows followed punches that carried terrifying physical force. With quick eyes, Ro raised his sword to parry the incoming fists, then used his leg to spring up into the air. Without wasting words, he brought his blade down in a devastating strike toward the Dalkin below. Ro closed quickly, his gaze full of killing intent. Dalkin answered with his own powerful punch, and the two of them unleashed everything they had, their strikes meeting in a thunderous explosion. Ro's technique threw Dalkin off balance and pushed him backward. Dalkin regarded him warily. "Your footwork's improved a little," he observed. Ro said nothing, only stared at him with fierce intent. Then Dalkin sneered dismissive, as if to belittle him, and suddenly unleashed his full power in anger. "You still are not my match." The overwhelming surge of strength stunned Ro. Before he could make sense of it, Dalkin closed the distance and delivered a brutal kick that sent Ro skidding backward. Ro landed and snapped back into combat stance. Dalkin reappeared through the smoke and lunged with another punch. Ro moved with nimble footwork and slipped aside. Dalkin barreled into a tree and glanced back. "What is the matter?" he called, then shoved with raw force, sending the whole tree crashing toward Ro. "You can't win by running forever." With no other option, Ro ducked low and endured the onslaught. Dalkin charged again, eyes full of killing intent. "Die." In that desperate moment, Ro remembered a single fact: Dalkin's adventurer ranking 672. He met the next strike with his sword, thinking, "I have fought stronger opponents than him before." Do not underestimate the adventurer ranking. Under the opponent's overwhelming pressure, Ro steadied himself. "Do not be afraid." Immediately a blue light shone from Ro's body. Dalkin froze, astonished. Ro seemed bolstered by newfound strength. Lightning flickered through his eyes as he surged forward. He landed a blow that struck home, and Dalkin seethed in fury. "A prana trick, this brat is copying my moves," he snorted. Ro replied calmly, "A technique? That is not even worthy of being called a technique." Dalkin, unable to accept the insult, swung his fist again. As Ro evaded, memories of prior lessons came back to him. You do not always meet superior strength head on, think, adapt. Owl had once told him that strategy is not invention. It is born from the knowledge you possess and the templates you have memorized. The foundation of tactics is to seize numerical advantage. Owl had offered to teach him a few simple templates to do just that. Ro quickly recalled the steps Owl had shown him. First, ambush using team coordination. Second, lure the enemy into your territory. Third, synchronize a surprise attack from a concealed unit behind the foe. At that exact moment, Owl appeared and lunged toward Dalkin. Dalkin could not believe what he was seeing. You can still move," he spat. Owl forced a bitter smile. "You bastard, you are really pushing me to my limit." Then Owl surged, wrapping himself around Dalkin's back. "Now!" Owl yelled. Dalkin, momentarily restrained, howled, "You damned," and exploded outward with a massive release of force that sent both of them skidding apart. He charged straight at Ro, snarling, "Too bad for you." Just as Dalkin's fist was about to smash into Ro, an arrow swept across his field of vision, and he howled in pain. Eddie, perched under a tree, had drawn and fired, his voice calling up, "Go, low," caught completely off guard. Dalkin took a diagonal cut across his belly as Rose struck. Chapter 21. When Rose's blade bit into Dalkin's side, Owl was flung backward. The blow looked like a killing strike. Dalkin stood agape, unprepared, mouth open. Just when it seemed he would been finished, he drew himself together and fought to keep his balance. Ro could hardly believe what was happening. Dalkin went berserk, his power leapt up another notch. "What do you take me for?" he roared. Even Owl, lying on the ground, was stunned by the surge of strength. Without wasting words, Dalkin launched another blitz at Ro. The forest itself seemed to tremble from his force. With no choice, Ro leapt into the air. From below, Dalkin shouted, "You blocked it, now it is over." A cruel smile split his face. "I will crush you the moment you hit the ground." From the forest floor, Dalkin taunted, "You deserve credit, an insignificant adventurer holding out this long is impressive." Owl lay exhausted, unconscious. Even Eddie could no longer fight. "You have no comrades left to rely on," Dalkin snarled like a wild beast. "Just die quietly." Ro felt panic wash through him. Then a creature appeared, a pair of paws reached out and a voice called, "Do not be afraid." A horn materialized. Ro reached a hand toward it and said, "I am not your enemy." Suddenly someone shouted his name, Dalkin. He froze mid-attack, glancing toward the voice. From behind, a wolf lunged at him and slammed hard into his back. "Lo, look!" shouted from a distance, pouring everything into the cry. "Finish him!" Seizing the opening, Ro did not hesitate, he swung with everything he had. From above came a crushing sword blow aimed at Dalkin. The enemy had no time to brace. He could only try to take the impact with his fists. Even so, his defense could not hold, the slashes kept coming, each one heavier than the last. Ro delivered the final, decisive strike from above Lotus. The world around them felt like it detonated and bloomed. Dalkin was hurled away, landing in a heap on the ground. Look ran over, breathless. "Lo, are you all right?" She took in his battered form and asked, "Are you okay?" The answer was obvious from the wounds. Yet her face was alight with exhilaration still. "You were amazing. You actually beat Dalkin." Ro answered calmly, "I only knocked him out. He won't be moving for a while." No sooner had he finished speaking than a huge hand reached for him. Dalkin glared at Ro with murderous intensity. Gritting his teeth, he hissed, "I will kill you. I will definitely kill you." For a moment Ro was stunned, this bastard was still. Then Dalkin wrapped both hands around Ro and hoisted him bodily into the air. Look screamed in anger, "Let Lo go." He cast a sidelong glance at her. His eyes were like those of a raging demon. Look saw it and trembled, unable to speak. She crouched down, face ashen. "A monster," she whispered. Dalkin still had Ro's head clamped in his hands. He ground his teeth and forced his strength, furious. "Damn it, I can't even crush this kid's skull." With a final heave he hurled Ro away. Ro broke free, gasping, and snapped back into a fighting stance. Dalkin's face remained a scowl as memories of past missions washed over him. "How long do you plan to rest?" he barked to his teammates. They answered nonchalantly, "No rush." Dalkin's got enough strength. He would been praised like that before. From now on, if you want to climb the ranks, you have to cooperate. Keep pace with us. The look on Dalkin's face then had been one of smug satisfaction, and now, in the present, it returned. Suddenly he stalked forward and spat, "You and I are both pathetic." Then he wrapped his hand around Ro's throat. "I will squeeze the life out of you right here." Ro could not match the man's raw power. As the choke tightened and death seemed close, a fierce resolve flared in Ro's head. "I can't die here. Not like this. I won't die." He dug his fingers into Dalkin's hand with everything he had. At that instant a flash, only the briefest image, flitted through his mind. A girl with long black hair. Then, once more, Ro's body erupted in a blinding surge of light, leaving Dalkin stunned.